This woman was sent to a mental hospital by her cruel mother-in-law. She had no mental health issues, yet two men dressed as doctors pinned her down on the bed. She screamed frantically for help, but the nurses held syringes, preparing to inject her with a sedative. She was utterly helpless and terrified. It turned out that over the past 3 years since she married into this family, she had frequently been beaten and verbally abused by her mother-in-law. What's even more infuriating is that her husband not only refuses to help her, but also forces his wife to apologize to his mother. The woman's name is Chaiwon. She laughs at herself for continuing to endure such treatment in this household. Her husband, Cheoki, even blames her for not knowing how to please his mother. Her mother-in-law, Yanj, is a powerful businesswoman. At the celebratory banquet, Yanj gave a speech on stage thanking her family for their support. When introducing her family, she only mentioned her son and daughter. When the spotlight fell on Chaiwon, she told the staff to turn off the lights. This gesture left Chaiwon with no choice but to laugh helplessly. No one cared about her dignity. Yanj appeared polite and courteous in front of others, but the moment she saw Chaiwon, she revealed her true, vicious nature and blamed her for her lowly origins. Facing such a mother-in-law every day, Chaiwon's heart was truly exhausted. The only place where she felt a sense of belonging was when she visited her grandfather and father. Ho Dong, her father, saw his daughter return home late at night and worried that she had encountered trouble. Chaiwon didn't want her father to worry and hurriedly said she was fine, fearing his daughter's hands were cold. Ho Dong quickly rubbed his hands to warm hers. The domineering Yanj entered her son and daughter-in-law's room without knocking. Cheoki complained that it was her mother's behavior that made Chaiwon dislike her so much. Yanj was annoyed that her son favored his wife. To this end, she even prepared to sow discord between her son and daughter-in-law. She picked up a lipstick and began applying it. She then took her son's white shirt and pressed her lipstick firmly onto it. She maliciously imagined her daughter-in-law's expression upon seeing it. When Chaiwon returned home, Yanj handed her son's shirt and told her to wash it immediately. Chaiwon saw the lipstick mark on the shirt. Yanj secretly watched her daughter-in-law's expression. Chaiwon saw her mother-in-law's lips and ended up laughing. This disappointed Yanj. Not only did the daughter-in-law not get angry, but she laughed. She felt that Chaiwon was mocking her. Enraged, she rushed over and scolded Chaiwon. Cheoki tried to pull them apart and told Chaiwon to apologize to her mother. Sitting on the ground, Chaiwon had truly had enough of this life. She wanted to divorce. To her surprise, her husband agreed without hesitation. At that moment, Chaiwon felt utterly helpless. The next day, Chaiwon went to the hospital to check the injuries from her mother-in-law's beating. She lied and said she had accidentally hurt herself. The doctor recognized it as domestic violence and advised her that enduring it was not a solution. On the bus, Chaiwon saw a bird in a cage. She thought back to her wedding day, when her mother-in-law had told her that Cheoki had always been fickle since he was a child. He would lose interest in toes after 3 months. She should enjoy the remaining time she had with him. Yanj treats Chaiwon like a toe until her son grows tired of playing with her. When Cheoki arrives, Yanj changes her attitude completely. At home, Yanj cuts up all of Chaiwon's credit cards to prevent her from spending her own money. Even worse, her mother-in-law brings 3 photos of beautiful women and asks Chaiwon to help her pick out the next wife for Cheoki. Chaiwon scolded her mother-in-law for her shameless behavior. However, Cheoki not only refused to speak up for her, but also cursed her out, calling her uncultured. Sitting on the bus, Chaiwon thought back on everything she had endured over the years. She swore to change everything. That day, she found her mother-in-law and told her she wanted to end the marriage. However, Yanj stated that he would not provide any alimony and even demanded alimony from Chaiwon. Chaiwon refused to argue with her mother-in-law. She produced a document containing evidence of domestic violence she had suffered, medical reports from the hospital, and gossip magazine articles exposing her son's affair with a celebrity. Yanj called a lawyer to discuss how to handle the situation. Since the scandal involving her son had already upset the shareholders, any news of a divorce would be detrimental to her and her son. The next day, Chaiwon returned home to pack her things. As soon as she stepped out the door, her mother-in-law stopped her. She cried and told Chaiwon that Cheoki had been in a serious car accident and was unconscious. He was now lying in the hospital. Chaiwon and her mother-in-law got into a car and headed to the hospital. However, her mother-in-law took advantage of Chaiwon's distraction and stole her phone. As soon as Chaiwon arrived at the hospital, she asked the nurse which ward her husband was in. But just then, 2 men dressed as doctors approached her and led her into a room. However, her husband was not in the room. The men told Chaiwon that her husband had gone for tests. They told her to wait there. However, the door was locked. No matter how much Chaiwon shouted, no one responded. She looked at the bed. The bedsheet read mental hospital. There was also a set of women's hospital gowns. Chaiwon panicked. She started looking for her phone. However, she couldn't find it in her pockets or bag. At that moment, a nurse came in with 2 men. They told Chaiwon to change into a patient's gown. They said they would perform a full-body examination shortly. Chaiwon asked where her mother-in-law was who had come with her. The male nurse told her that she had already left. He told her to stay there and rest. Chaiwon finally understood. Yanj returned home and saw his son drunk. Cheoki blamed his mother for her shameful behavior. He then asked his mother where she had locked Chaiwon up, but Yanj refused to tell his son. In the mental hospital, no one responded to Chaiwon's calls. She began searching the room for a way to escape, but her efforts were in vain. She was completely devastated. That day, Chaiwon began planning her escape. She lied that she couldn't sleep at night. The doctor gave her a few sleeping pills every day. She had already saved some up. She took a cup and crushed the sleeping pills into powder. The guards took Chaiwon to meet with the director. Chaiwon observed every detail of the door opening and memorized it carefully. Halfway there, she saw a stranger enter the bathroom. At that moment, Chaiwon told the guards that she was in severe abdominal pain and needed to use the restroom. She went into the women's restroom and said that it was occupied. With no other option, she had to go to the men's restroom. She then told the man that she was being held captive and asked him for help. The man's name was Seon. He didn't quite believe Chaiwon's story. After all, this was a mental hospital. Chaiwon told Seon that she was perfectly sane. She took off the diamond ring on her finger and begged the man to let her use his phone. Before Seon could agree, she put the diamond ring in his pocket and took out the phone. However, before she could dial the number, she was discovered and stopped by 2 bodyguards. 2 nurses saw this and found it strange. Chaiwon had bodyguards watching her 24 hours a day. No one except the director and Nurse Jo was allowed to enter the ward. The nurses thought her behavior was normal. Chaiwon was taken back to her room. She asked the 2 bodyguards to have a cup of coffee with her because she had caused them trouble again. She secretly added sleeping pills to the coffee. Seeing one of them drink it, she felt a surge of excitement. That night, Chaiwon saw the bodyguard sitting at the door. The door to her room was unlocked. She could only wait for the sleeping pills to take effect. After an unknown amount of time, the bodyguard at the door was sound asleep. Chaiwon was extremely nervous. She carefully removed the door card. Unfortunately, Chaiwon was discovered by another bodyguard. She ran away. It was raining heavily outside. Chaiwon ran as fast as she could. The bodyguard chased after her relentlessly. Suddenly, she slipped and fell down the hillside. Her head hit a rock. She fainted on the road. At that moment, Seon drove by and saw someone lying on the side of the road. He got out of the car, picked up Chaiwon, and took her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Chaiwon's mother-in-law, upon learning that Chaiwon had run away, scolded the 2 bodyguards for being incompetent. She ordered them to find Chaiwon by tonight. After being examined by a doctor, Chaiwon was found to have no serious injuries. When Chaiwon woke up, she couldn't remember anything. The female doctor mistakenly thought they were a couple. Chaiwon also referred to Seon as her husband. Seon was confused. Seeing that Chaiwon was okay, he drove her back to the mental hospital. Before getting out of the car, Chaiwon saw the words on the sign at the entrance of the mental hospital. She was suddenly triggered and remembered some scenes. She then clung to Seon's arm in fear. Seon recalled everything he had seen at the mental hospital. He also began to suspect why Chaiwon was there. He drove Chaiwon away from there. Chaiwon's father couldn't get in touch with her, so he called his mother-in-law to ask about her. Yanj lied, saying that Chaiwon had gone to Canada with his son and had forgotten to bring her phone. He didn't expect Hodon to believe such a blatant lie. Seon took Chaiwon to a friend's house and told her to rest there for the night. He planned to take her to the police station the next day. Once her identity and the details of the incident were clarified, everything would be resolved. The next day, Seon brought Chaiwon to the police station. Due to her head injury, Chaiwon couldn't remember anything. Seon asked the police to help find Chaiwon's family. Yanj and Cheoki, who had heard the news, rushed to the police station. Upon seeing his daughter-in-law, Yanj hurriedly pretended to show concern. Seon felt something was off about the mother and son. He remembered what Chaiwon had told him earlier about being under house arrest and asking him for help. Seon felt uneasy. He asked the mother and son to prove that they were Chaiwon's relatives. Yanj took out a photo. It was Chaiwon's wedding photo with her husband. Seeing Chaiwon get into the car, both of them felt a bit reluctant. Perhaps this was fate. In the car, Cheoki felt guilty. He had always cared deeply for Chaiwon. This made Yanj very unhappy. After a thorough examination at the hospital, the doctor determined that Chaiwon had temporarily lost her memory due to excessive mental stress. The grandmother refused to acknowledge this, fearing that others would discover she had abused Chaiwon. Back home, Cheoki packed a suitcase, intending to take Chaiwon to live elsewhere. Upon hearing this, Yanj immediately pretended to be deeply saddened. In the end, Chaiwon and her husband didn't leave. Yanj lay in bed pretending to be sick. He then held Chaiwon's hand and apologized to her. He hypocritically said he would treat Chaiwon like his own daughter. Cheoki also hoped to start a new life with Chaiwon. Yanj stopped pretending. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, and she decided to take revenge. She then called Si-yeon to thank him for helping Chaewon. She planned to take Chaewon to lunch with Si-yeon the next day. The next day, Chaewon and her mother-in-law arrive at a high-end restaurant. The mother-in-law told Chaewon to go in first. She said she needed to use the restroom. She asked the waiter to bring them to glasses of kiwi juice. Yanj smiled smugly. Soon, Si-yeon also arrived. The two waited for a long time, but the mother-in-law didn't come. Chaewon took a sip of the juice. At that moment, Yanj was outside planning to have someone take intimate photos of Chaewon and Si-yeon. Soon, Chaewon suddenly felt short of breath. Si-yeon saw something was wrong and quickly helped Chaewon to her feet and took her to the hospital. However, all of this was Yanj's scheme. Upon arriving at the hospital, it turned out that Chaewon was allergic to kiwi fruit. Fortunately, she was treated in time and was fine. The juice was ordered by the grandmother. Si-yeon wondered if her grandmother didn't know that Chaewon was allergic to kiwi fruit. Back home, Chaewon asked the nanny if she knew that Chaewon was allergic to kiwi fruit. The nanny told her that everyone in the family knew. While they were still talking, Yanj suddenly started yelling. She scolded the nanny for talking too much. Yanj even said, in a sarcastic tone, that Chaewon and Si-yeon were meant for each other. To avoid worrying Choki, she told Chaewon not to tell Choki about any of this. After Chaewon returned to her room, Yanj warned the nanny not to talk nonsense, or she would be fired. That day, Chaewon's grandmother had a box of fresh abalone at her house. Grandmother Ma-soon asked Ho-dong to deliver it to Chaewon's mother-in-law's house. At that moment, Yanj told Chaewon that she must not get pregnant during this time, when she had lost her memory, because her physical condition might be harmful to the baby if she were to become pregnant. In reality, Yanj was afraid that if Chaewon had a child, it would be inconvenient for him to expel her from the house in the future. Choki walked in at that moment. Seeing his mother and Chaewon getting along so well, he was very happy. Ho-dong arrived with the gifts at that moment. To his surprise, Chaewon's younger sister, Julie, opened the door. Yanj panicked upon hearing this. She had been telling everyone that Chaewon and Choki had gone abroad on a trip. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, Ho-dong was about to leave. Just then, Choki suddenly came downstairs. Yanj had no idea how to explain this. Ho-dong was surprised, asking where his son-in-law had gone. Chaewon also came downstairs at that moment. Chaewon, who had lost her memory, didn't recognize her own father. Ho-dong also noticed that something was wrong with Chaewon and hurriedly asked her what was wrong. Choki told his father-in-law that Chaewon had an accident a few days ago that caused her to lose her memory. Ho-dong was on the verge of breaking down. How could his daughter end up like this? Yanj was still trying to explain. Ho-dong angrily scolded Yanj for deceiving him. He grabbed Choki and asked him what he had done to Chaewon. Choki knelt down in front of his father-in-law and admitted that it was all his fault. Ho-dong no longer trusted this family. He wanted to take his daughter home, but Chaewon didn't go with her father. She couldn't remember anything. Ho-dong didn't force her. Chaewon apologized to her father. Her father didn't blame her. He believed Chaewon would get better. He would visit her anytime. Ho-dong walked away, tears streaming down his face. He felt so sorry for his daughter. That day, Si-yeon found Chaewon. He didn't want to get involved in others' affairs, but he felt guilty for not telling Chaewon what he had seen. He told Chaewon that they had first met at a mental hospital, and at the time, Chaewon had said she was being held there against her will. The next day, Chaewon went to the mental hospital to look for her medical records, but the hospital had no records of her. There was also no information about her in the surveillance footage. Chaewon wondered why Si-yeon had lied to her. It turned out that her mother-in-law had already made arrangements with the director of the mental hospital and had all records related to Chaewon completely erased. When Chaewon returned home, her mother-in-law was already waiting for her. Yanj sent the maid away and took out some photos. They were all photos of Chaewon and Si-yeon meeting alone. Yanj told Chaewon that she had been hiding an unclear relationship with Choki and Si-yeon from her. She also said she wanted to divorce Choki. Yanj even lied, claiming that Chaewon had gone to the mental hospital to secretly meet with Si-yeon. To her surprise, Chaewon actually believed her. Back in her room, Chaewon hated herself for doing such a thing. The next day, Chaewon met with Si-yeon. Si-yeon said she wasn't interested in other people's business. Unexpectedly, Chaewon threw water at him. She asked him if he had an improper relationship with her. Si-yeon got angry and told her to wake up. The heartless mother-in-law did all this to ensure that her son could smoothly become the representative director at the shareholders' meeting. Sure enough, no negative news came out. They succeeded. Choki smoothly became the representative director. The goal had been achieved. Yanj instructed the lawyer to expedite the divorce proceedings for her son. That evening, upon returning home, Choki bought Chaewon a new phone as a gift. But that wasn't all. There was another gift for Chaiwon. The mother-in-law was displeased upon seeing it. Upon opening it, she found a pearl necklace. Cheoki helped her put it on. Yanj reluctantly complimented it in front of his son, but as soon as her son left, she ripped the necklace off and scolded Chaiwon for not being worthy of wearing a pearl necklace. The maid told Chaiwon that Yanj was an overly harsh person. Their conversation was overheard by Yanj. The maid was scolded harshly. In the evening, Chaiwon and her husband were preparing to rest, but the mother-in-law called Chaiwon out. She berated Chaiwon for having an improper relationship with Seon and sleeping in the same bed with her son. She ordered Chaiwon and Cheoki to sleep in separate rooms for now. Hearing this, Chaiwon ran away crying. She sat in the courtyard, heartbroken and at a loss. Meanwhile, Seon was also troubled by Chaiwon's situation. He called Yanj to arrange a meeting. He wanted to find out why she was slandering him. Seon told Yanj that if he didn't apologize, she would sue him for defamation. Yanj then took out photos of him and Chaiwon being intimate. Seon was shocked when she saw them. Yanj angrily told Chaiwon to go back to her parents' house. Despite Chaiwon's desperate pleas, it was to no avail. Back home, Chaiwon started packing her bags. Cheoki asked his wife why she was doing this. Yanj rushed over and said he was the one who demanded it. Cheoki scolded his wife, saying Chaiwon's body hadn't fully recovered and she shouldn't be doing this. Yanj showed his son the intimate photos of Chaiwon and Seon. He then insulted Chaiwon's family. Cheoki asked his wife to explain what was going on, but Chaiwon knew nothing about it. Seon was in his office, recalling the events surrounding Chaiwon. He had someone investigate the mental hospital to find evidence of Chaiwon's admission. Cheoki was drunk at home. In this situation, Chaiwon decided to return to her parents' home to calm down, but her husband blocked her. He picked up a bottle and threw it at Chaiwon. This terrified Chaiwon. The shock caused Chaiwon, who had lost her memory, to recall the scenes of domestic violence she had suffered at the hands of her husband. Yanj came out and verbally abused her. He told her to clean up the house. She was not even treated like a maid in this house. The maid saw this and told Chaiwon not to clean up. She would take care of it. The maid was relieved that Chaiwon wasn't injured this time. If it had been like last time, it would have been dangerous. At that time, her neck had suffered severe injuries. Chaiwon hoped she could remember everything as soon as possible. Back in the room, Chaiwon helped her husband cover himself with the blanket. She was truly a kind and good wife. It was just that this family didn't know how to appreciate her. Grandmother called Chaiwon. Today was the 100th anniversary of her grandfather's noodle factory. She asked her to come back for the celebration. Chaiwon told her mother-in-law that she wanted to go back to her parents' house for the celebration. Unexpectedly, her cruel mother-in-law told her to go back and never come back. Chaiwon ignored her. She then returned to her parents' house. Seeing noodles all over the yard reminded her of her childhood. Watching her grandfather make noodles, Seon also arrived at the noodle factory at that moment. It turned out that Seon's grandfather and Chaiwon's grandfather had a deep connection with the noodle factory. Seon came to attend the celebration on behalf of her father. Seeing each other again made both of them feel a little awkward. Chaiwon was afraid that her father would see and misunderstand. She hurriedly took Seon and hid. However, they were spotted by Cheoki. He immediately punched Seon. This made Cheoki's misunderstanding even deeper. Seon saw this and felt helpless. Cheoki became angrier and angrier. He kicked Chaiwon out of the car and drove away alone. At this moment, Chaiwon received a call from a clinic. This was the clinic where Chaiwon had been receiving psychological counseling before she lost her memory. The doctor then played her the content of her counseling sessions before she lost her memory. In the recording, her mother-in-law forced Chaiwon to sign an unreasonable alimony agreement. She also asked the doctor if there were any medications to delay pregnancy. Ultimately, Chaiwon decided to divorce her husband and began gathering evidence to support her case. After listening to the recording, Chaiwon finally understood everything. She was on the verge of breaking down. Seon also found evidence and arranged to meet with Chaiwon. It turned out that Seon had called her older brother, who worked at a mental hospital, and told him everything that had happened at the mental hospital. Seon even took out her passport to prove that she and Chaiwon didn't know each other before. She had been living in the United States all these years and had only recently returned. Her older brother, who knew a little about photography, noticed that the photos had been altered. Everything was finally revealed. Chaiwon felt that Seon had not only saved her, but also suffered because of her. She apologized to Seon. Back home, her husband confronted Chaiwon about coming home so late, asking if she had been on a date with Seon. Knowing everything, Chaiwon told her husband to stop making a scene. That night, Cheoki noticed his wife was missing. It turned out Chaiwon had gone to the basement to look for the suitcase she had left behind before the incident. However, the basement door was locked. She had to find a way to get the key to the basement door. Just then, the living room light suddenly turned on. Chaiwon was startled. It turned out that Choki wanted Chaiwon to hand over her phone. He wanted to check if Chaiwon had been talking to Seon. Seeing Chaiwon resist, he tried to hit her but was stopped by Chaiwon. Just then, the mother-in-law came out. She scolded Chaiwon while pushing her to the ground. Facing such a mother-in-law and husband, Chaiwon smiled sarcastically and said, "Are you trying to lock me up in a mental hospital again?" Yanj and Choki were both shocked. Chaiwon had regained her memory. Chaiwon scolded her mother-in-law for treating her this way. Faced with Chaiwon's questioning, Yanj stammered and claimed he was tired and wanted to go to sleep. Chaiwon then explained the entire situation to her husband. Choki went to her mother's room and confronted her about why she did this. Yanj said he only wanted Chaiwon to leave you. Choki insisted she would never separate from Chaiwon. Choki then knelt down in the courtyard and begged his wife for forgiveness. But Chaiwon no longer trusted this family. Unable to sleep, Chaiwon called her father. She didn't want to tell her father about everything for fear of worrying him. She just wanted to hear his voice. That was the only way she could feel the warmth she had been missing for so long. Chaiwon decided to recover her memories. Then she would leave this house. In the morning, her mother-in-law mocked Chaiwon for refusing to leave. Faced with such a mother-in-law, Chaiwon could only swallow her anger. After her mother-in-law left, Chaiwon went to her mother-in-law's room. She wanted to find the key to the basement door, but her mother-in-law suddenly returned to get her phone. This startled Chaiwon. That day, her mother-in-law arranged a meeting with Chaiwon's father. She asked him to take Chaiwon back home. This surprised Chaiwon's father greatly. Yanj directly stated that he wanted them to divorce. Hodong wanted to know why. Yanj tells him that she has serious conflicts with Chaiwon and also doesn't get along with Choki. Chaiwon hasn't been happy living in her house all these years. Hearing this, the father feels both heartbroken and angry for his daughter. Hodong then came to find his daughter and wanted to take her home. He couldn't bear to see his daughter suffer like this. Chaiwon told her father that she couldn't leave now. She wanted to wait until she regained her memory and leave with her head held high. She didn't want to be treated like trash and kicked out now. Choki returned and knelt before his father-in-law. He promised his father-in-law that he would change and start anew. That night, Choki told his mother he was taking Chaiwon away to immigrate abroad. Yanj heard this and choked herself, pretending to be dead. Seeing his mother act this way, the son turned and left. After the son left, Yanj immediately changed her expression and scolded her daughter-in-law. She then kicked Chaiwon out the door. Chaiwon was wearing only slippers and bare legs in the middle of winter. Seon happened to see Chaiwon on his way home. Chaiwon lied that she was going out to buy something. Seon saw Chaiwon dressed like that in the cold winter. He knew she had been bullied again. Chaiwon fell asleep in the car after a while. Seon covered her with a blanket without waking her up. At that moment, Choki was also drinking alone. When Chaiwon woke up, she saw that Seon was also asleep. She covered him with her clothes. Seon also woke up. He took off his own shoes and gave them to Chaiwon to wear. Then he took her to a restaurant to eat some hot food. Seeing this, Chaiwon couldn't help but cry. After dinner, Chaiwon didn't let Seon send her home. She was afraid of causing him more trouble. She borrowed some money from Seon to take a bus home. On the bus, Chaiwon was shivering from the cold. When she got home, her mother-in-law still wouldn't open the door. She had no choice but to crouch at the door. When she woke up, her husband told her she had been feverish all night. If it weren't for the maid's help, the situation would have been much worse. That day, Yanj came home and asked the maid what Chaiwon had been doing all day. The maid told her that Chaiwon seemed to be looking for the basement key. There was her suitcase in the basement. She decided to go and see if there was anything important inside. Chaiwon heard this and quietly followed her downstairs. Unexpectedly, the light was broken. Chaiwon took advantage of her mother-in-law's inattention and slipped inside. Yanj saw the suitcase and grabbed it, heading toward the door. He then locked the door. Chaiwon realized something was wrong and hurriedly called for help outside. Unexpectedly, this stimulus reminded Chaiwon of everything. Yanj then took out all the documents from her daughter-in-law's suitcase. She scolded her daughter-in-law for pretending to be pitiful on the surface, but secretly making all the preparations for divorce. Just then, Choki suddenly returned. She hurriedly hid the documents and suitcase. Choki asked her mother why Chaiwon was gone. Yanj said she didn't know. Choki called her father-in-law to see if Chaiwon had gone back to her parents' house. She found out that Chaiwon hadn't returned. They couldn't find Chaiwon anywhere. Choki had no choice but to call Seon to ask if Chaiwon was with him. This made Seon feel puzzled. After hanging up, Seon was worried about Chaiwon. He was about to go look for her but suddenly wasn't sure if he should. Chaiwon, locked in the basement in the cold winter, was shivering. Choki returned home but still didn't see Chaiwon. The nanny quietly told Choki that Chaiwon might be locked in the basement. Choki blamed the nanny for not saying anything sooner. When Chaiwon was released, he fainted in his husband's arms. An angry Choki went to his mother's room and asked her why she did that. This left Yanj feeling confused. She asked Chaiwon, "Did I lock you up on purpose?" Chaiwon wasn't sure either. Actually, he had sneaked in on his own. Cheoki expressed his disappointment in his mother. Yanj feels helpless at the situation. She then asks her daughter-in-law if her memory has returned. Chaiwon's expression speaks volumes. Si-yeon, worried about Chaiwon, comes to her door, but he immediately feels ridiculous. That day, Yanj notices that Chaiwon has been acting strangely lately. She calls her lawyer and tells him to transfer all of Cheoki's assets out of her name. Chaiwon, who was outside the door, heard everything clearly. She remembered when she first got married. Her mother-in-law had forced her to sign a divorce and alimony agreement. That agreement was in her mother-in-law's safe. That day was her mother-in-law's birthday. Chaiwon suggested that the whole family go out for dinner to celebrate. After everyone left, Chaiwon went to her mother-in-law's room to open the safe. Unexpectedly, no matter how many times she tried, the password was incorrect. The maid brought a pair of clean men's shoes. Chaiwon took them. These shoes did not belong to her husband. Chaiwon recalled the scene when she was kicked out of the house by her mother-in-law. Si-yeon had given her her own shoes to wear. That day, Chaiwon told Si-yeon that her memory had returned. She thanked Si-yeon for taking care of her during this time. She then returned the shoes to Si-yeon. Chaiwon had regained her memory. This might be their last meeting. After all, Chaiwon was married. They shook hands and said goodbye. Back home, Chaiwon saw the nanny burning something. It turned out to be the evidence of domestic violence and her husband's infidelity that she had collected before losing her memory. That evening, the family gathered for a dinner party. Chaiwon's mother-in-law arrived first. The two were about to arrive at the restaurant. Chaiwon suddenly said she had a headache and wanted to go home to rest. She told her husband to go ahead. She would take a taxi back. Cheoki saw this and lost his appetite for the dinner. On the other side, Yanj had been waiting for a long time but didn't see her family arrive. Then she received a call from her son saying he couldn't come to the dinner. She called her daughter. To her surprise, her daughter wasn't coming either. Julie was on a date with Si-yeon. It turned out she had been secretly in love with Si-yeon. Back home, Cheoki prepared water and medicine for Chaiwon. Then he received a call about something he needed to handle. After saying goodbye to his wife, he left. All of this was Chaiwon's scheme. In the restaurant, Yanj blew out the birthday candles alone. She mocked herself for being so miserable. She had 2 children, but neither of them was there. She grabbed a piece of cake and stuffed it into her mouth. Just then, Chaiwon suddenly appeared. She asked her mother-in-law why she had locked her up in a mental hospital. Her mother-in-law, who was drunk, told her how she had locked Chaiwon up in a mental hospital. In the end, it was because she despised Chaiwon's ordinary family background. She believed Chaiwon would be of no help to her son's future. She was a businesswoman. She would never engage in a deal that didn't bring profit. She even mocked Chaiwon as a piece of shit on her son's path to success. As a mother, she had to eliminate Chaiwon. Little did she know that Chaiwon had recorded the entire conversation. When Yanj woke up from his drunkenness, he went to the kitchen. Chaiwon was just preparing some honey water to help him sober up. The mother-in-law directly pushed the water aside. She suspected that Chaiwon was trying to frame her. Chaiwon saw her husband coming and picked up the honey water to give it to her mother-in-law. Yanj said in front of his son that the water might be poisoned. Cheoki thought his mother was being too suspicious. He then picked up the water and drank it directly. Back in the room, Cheoki knelt down before Chaiwon again. He promised his wife that he would become more responsible. Chaiwon told her husband that his mother might have some mental issues and needed to go to the hospital for a checkup. Cheoki thought about it and also felt that his mother had been acting strangely lately. That day, Cheoki took his mother out shopping. Yanj was very happy, but when they arrived, she discovered that Chaiwon was also there. It turned out to be a psychological counseling center. Yanj immediately declared that she wouldn't let herself be bullied and stormed off angrily. She glared at Chaiwon with hatred in her eyes. That day, Chaiwon brought food to her emotionally distraught mother-in-law. Yanj believed that Chaiwon was staying there to gain more benefits. She intended to shatter Chaiwon's dreams. She took out the commitment letter Chaiwon had signed when they first married. Apart from the pitiful amount of alimony written on it, she wouldn't give her a single penny more. Chaiwon opened the video on her phone. The video showed her mother-in-law admitting how she had Chaiwon committed to a mental hospital. If the newspaper or shareholders found out, it would cause a huge scandal. Yanj tried to grab the phone. Chaiwon said she would only give it back in exchange for the agreement. In the end, Yanj tore up the agreement. Chaiwon deleted the video. The deal was done. That day, Chaiwon and her husband returned to her parents' home. They planned to go to the supermarket to buy some things first. However, Si-yeon happened to be conducting market research at the same supermarket. He also saw Chaiwon and Cheoki shopping. Just as they were about to check out, Cheoki remembered he had forgotten to buy something. At that moment, Si-yeon appeared and greeted Chaiwon. Seeing each other again, the two couldn't hide their awkwardness. Just then, Cheoki returned with his purchases. Si-yeon, witnessing this scene, felt a mix of emotions. Back at her parents' house, Chaiwon told her father that her memory had returned. Father and daughter embraced each other, shedding tears of joy. That day, the nanny brought back a package for Choki. When the mother-in-law opened it, she saw it was an immigration application form and flew into a rage. She threw it at Chaiwon, who had just returned, and accused her of having ulterior motives. Choki said that the immigration was his idea and had nothing to do with Chaiwon. This incident also made Yanj realize for the first time that her son was no longer under her control. That day, Yanj asked Chaiwon to meet her. She told Chaiwon that Choki was the only thing in her life. Without Choki, she had no reason or courage to live. She then handed Chaiwon a check and told her to divorce Choki. When Choki found out, the mother and son had a huge argument. Yanj angrily told her son that if he wanted to immigrate, he should quit his job first. Choki handed her resignation letter immediately. Seeing her son defying her, Yanj was so angry she didn't know what to do. After leaving, Chaiwon praised her husband for being decisive. After being praised, Choki became even more determined to fight his mother to the end. Chaiwon's plan to get back at her mother-in-law is starting to work. That day, when her mother-in-law came home, Chaiwon deliberately ignored her. Yanj was furious. She asked Chaiwon what she had to do to stop talking about moving abroad. Chaiwon said she had to show her true feelings first. Yanj begged Chaiwon to help her. She really couldn't bear to be separated from her son. Chaiwon told her mother-in-law to write a statement for her, admitting everything she had done to her over the years, and offering compensation for emotional distress. This left Yanj a loss. If her mother-in-law agreed to her request, Chaiwon would discuss it with Choki. That day, as soon as Chaiwon returned home, Choki told her the good news. It turned out that her mother-in-law had, indeed, written an agreement for Chaiwon, handing over control of the household finances to her. She even knelt down in front of her son and begged Chaiwon to forgive her for her past actions. In her emotional state, the mother-in-law had difficulty breathing and couldn't speak. After being taken to the hospital, the doctors found that she was physically fine. As for why she couldn't speak, it was likely due to mental stress. To recover, she needed to stabilize her emotions. Seeing his mother like this, the son told her he would no longer immigrate. He asked her to rest properly. Choki temporarily took over his mother's duties at the company. An employee informed him that there was an electrical distribution project at the company. The chairman had planned to hand it over to his father-in-law before falling ill. He then relayed this information to his father-in-law. Upon returning home, he thanked his mother for entrusting the project to his father-in-law. He never imagined that his mother had gone to such lengths to get along with Chaiwon. That day, Hodong called Chaiwon to inform her his mother-in-law's company had given him a project. He told Chaiwon to thank her mother-in-law. At that moment, Yanj was sending a text message. When she saw Chaiwon come in, she hurriedly hid her phone. After taking his medicine, Yanj looked at Chaiwon with a mocking expression. Sure enough, early the next morning, the warehouse where Hodong was working caught fire. His mother-in-law was not surprised at all. Soon after, the police arrived and arrested Hodong. Upon hearing the news, Chaiwon was frantic. She hurried to the police station to find out what was going on. Seeing this, her mother-in-law looked smug. In the taxi, Chaiwon heard the news on the radio. She learned that the fire had caused serious damage and injuries. This made Chaiwon even more worried about her father. All the evidence at the police station was against Hodong. The fire was caused by an electrical malfunction. However, both the project manager and the construction worker were Hodong. Chaiwon rushed to the police station. Her father said he had carefully inspected everything and that the fire couldn't have started on its own. Chaiwon went to her husband's company. This project was also given to her father by her husband. The injured employee was also from her husband's company. However, the injured employee refused to settle. This also pushed Choki to the brink of collapse. Previously, all company matters were handled by her mother. Now that her mother is at home recovering from illness, it has exposed her lack of ability. Upon returning home, Chaiwon apologized to her mother-in-law. The warehouse destroyed in the fire belonged to her mother-in-law's company. Her mother-in-law seemed unconcerned. This made Chaiwon feel very strange. At the entrance of the police station, Chaiwon encountered a beautiful woman. The woman's name was Kunhee. She was Hodong's friend who had come to visit him. She told Chaiwon not to worry. She had already asked a friend to handle the matter. Chaiwon and the police officer discussed the situation. To their surprise, they encountered Seon there. It turned out that Seon had come with a lawyer to assist in handling Hodong's case. This came as a surprise to both of them. After the lawyer's analysis, if the victim refused to settle, Hodong might face more than a year in prison. This made Chaiwon even more worried. Seon wondered why the victim refused to settle. After leaving the police station, Chaiwon learned that Seon had come with a lawyer at her father's request. She sighed that every time she was most helpless, Seon would appear. On the way home, Seon drove Chaiwon back. Chaiwon thought of her father in detention and couldn't help but cry. When she returned home, Choki began to scold her for neglecting her sick mother-in-law. Chaiwon suddenly realized that all of this must have been orchestrated by her mother-in-law. She asked her mother-in-law why she would even frame her father. Yanj, seeing this, immediately put on an innocent expression. Faced with Chaiwon's relentless questioning, Choki once again struck Chaiwon. Chaiwon was so angry she couldn't say a word. That day, Chaiwon went to the hospital to visit the victims of the fire. She asked them to reconcile with her father. Chaiwon asked them if the reason they wouldn't reconcile was because of the chairman. They asked her how she knew. Back home, Chaiwon said her mother-in-law had won. She then knelt down in front of her mother-in-law and promised to divorce Choki unconditionally. Please spare her father. Yanj then demanded her daughter-in-law hand over her phone. She removed the battery to prevent her from recording anything. She instructed Chaiwon to say something to provoke Choki. This way, Choki wouldn't think it was because of her mother that he was divorcing her. Meanwhile, Choki was overjoyed upon learning the victims had agreed to reconcile. The lawyer lied, claiming that the reconciliation was only possible because the chairman had personally gone to apologize. Little did they know that it was all a scheme orchestrated by her mother. On the bus, Chaiwon felt that divorce was also a form of liberation for her. Soon, Hodong finally emerged from the police station. Seeing his daughter come to pick him up, his in-laws had also arrived. The entire family was overjoyed. Kunhee secretly saw Chaiwon's father come out and finally felt at ease. Choki returned home and thanked her mother for saving her father-in-law. Hodong took Chaiwon home and wanted to go in to personally thank his in-laws, but Chaiwon stopped him. Her father was confused, but Chaiwon knew exactly what was going on. She then told her father that Aunt Kunhee cared a lot about him. Hearing his daughter say this, Hodong blushed shyly. In front of her father, Chaiwon kept all her grievances to herself. After her father left, Chaiwon held back her tears. Back home, her husband began to scold Chaiwon for not saying a single word of thanks to his mother. Chaiwon didn't bother to respond. She asked her husband when they would immigrate. Choki felt that his wife didn't care about his mother at all. Chaiwon told her husband that his mother was faking her illness. Hearing this, Choki wanted to hit her again. Chaiwon angrily told Choki to choose between her and his mother. At that moment, Yeon walked in pretending to her son to go immigrate with Chaiwon. Unaware of this, Choki left angrily. After her son left, Yeonjae stopped pretending and told her to divorce him immediately. Chaiwon was so angry she could only laugh helplessly. That night, Chaiwon told her husband she wanted a divorce. She didn't want to live this kind of life with him anymore. After Chaiwon's repeated provocation, Choki finally agreed to divorce her. The next morning, Chaiwon took the divorce agreement and went to divorce her husband. But Choki suddenly changed his mind. He explained that he had been drunk the previous night, but Chaiwon insisted on divorcing him. In desperation, Choki confessed to Chaiwon that he had no confidence in his ability to survive on his own, because everything he had now was given to him by his mother. Chaiwon didn't care about that. She just told him to go to court as agreed to finalize the divorce. Choki's mother was very satisfied with Chaiwon's behavior. Chaiwon's marriage finally came to an end. After the divorce, Choki saw that Chaiwon didn't look sad at all. He angrily accused Chaiwon of already having another man. Chaiwon didn't want to respond. Choki was heartbroken. Later, Chaiwon told her mother-in-law that the divorce proceedings were complete. Chaiwon found Seon's handkerchief in her bag. At that moment, Seon was about to leave on a business trip with Julie. After receiving Chaiwon's call, he hurried to meet her. He even postponed his departure time. Chaiwon returned the handkerchief to Seon and thanked him for his help with her father's matter. Seon thought Chaiwon was going to immigrate. Chaiwon didn't tell Seon about her divorce either. Both of them thought they might never see each other again. They then said goodbye to each other. Seon and Chaiwon gave each other a little kitten. They hoped that the other would have someone to confide in when they were unhappy. Chaiwon returned home to pack her things. Her mother-in-law brought her a check as compensation, but Chaiwon didn't want it. Her mother-in-law urged her not to regret it. Chaiwon swore that she would make her mother-in-law regret it. After the divorce, Chaiwon returned to her parents' home. Looking at the familiar courtyard, she felt a mix of emotions that she could only bear alone. She didn't want to make her father and grandparents sad. Her father was surprised to see his daughter carrying a suitcase. Facing her family's questions, Chaiwon told them she had divorced. Facing her family's questions, Chaiwon couldn't answer. Fortunately, Chaiwon's heartbroken grandfather told everyone to shut up. With a heavy heart, Chaiwon was glad she still had her father's shoulder to lean on. On the other side, Choki was drunk. Suddenly, he noticed that his mother could speak. Yeonjae quickly made an excuse to brush it off. Choki said he was tired and told his mother to leave first. He sat at Chaiwon's vanity table and opened the drawer. Seeing Chaiwon's hairpin reminded him of the first time he met her. At that time, Chaiwon was just a young girl who had come to the company for an interview. When he saw Chaiwon, he was deeply captivated by the girl in front of him. Choki truly loved Chaiwon. Chaiwon and her father came to her mother's grave. Having lost her mother at a young age, Chaiwon longed for a mother-in-law who would treat her like a mother. But things didn't go as planned. She ended up with a cruel mother-in-law At the factory, her grandfather bombed off, wanted to hand over the century-old noodle factory to Chaiwon to manage, because Chaiwon had always loved making noodles with her grandfather since she was a child. Their conversation was overheard by her aunt Kansu. She rushed over to interrupt the conversation between her grandfather and Chaiwon. Kansu hurriedly told her younger sister Kiwo and her sister-in-law Taehi what she had heard. This terrified the women. All of them had come to inherit the family business. They were after the wheat fields worth billions. They feared that another person would come to compete with them for the inheritance. That day, Cheoki and Seon met. It turned out that both of them were attending the meeting on behalf of their respective companies. Cheoki suggested exchanging business cards. However, Seon refused. Seon said that he was going to emigrate anyway. Hearing this, Cheoki immediately flew into a rage. He grabbed Seon by the collar and demanded to know if he had met with Chaiwon again. Seon felt completely confused and pushed Cheoki away, and warned him that if he dared to be so rude again, he would not be so lenient. That day, the family called Chaiwon over and asked her if she also wanted to claim the billion-dollar inheritance. Chaiwon told them she had no interest in the inheritance. She told her elders that she planned to find a job and start working. This put her uncle and aunt at ease. The family of the fire victims came to find Cheoki to express their gratitude to her mother. During the conversation, Cheoki learned that it was her mother who had been preventing the victims from reconciling. She also gave them a consolation payment. Cheoki then found her mother and confronted her about the fire incident, asking if she had done it. Yanj tried to act as if he didn't know anything. Cheoki told her mother everything the victim's family had said. Yanj blamed her for revealing the secret. Cheoki accused her mother of being too underhanded. Yanj told her son that she would find him a better wife. Cheoki said he would never divorce her. He then went to Chaiwon's house and knelt on the ground, revealing everything his mother had threatened Chaiwon about. Her grandfather was so angry that he fainted. Chaiwon accused Cheoki of not having the right to say such things and cause her family pain. Hodong was so angry that he nearly fainted as well. Chaiwon's uncle dragged Cheoki out. Cheoki was severely reprimanded and told never to show his face to Chaiwon again. At that moment, Cheoki was truly heartbroken. That day, while conducting market research, Seon unexpectedly spotted Chaiwon. She was dressed in her work attire. Seon looked around but couldn't find her. He thought he must have seen wrong. But then Chaiwon, pushing a cart and working, appeared. Seon felt deeply sorry for Chaiwon's current situation. He asked the supermarket manager and learned that Chaiwon was a new part-time employee. On the other side, the cruel mother-in-law had just kicked Chaiwon out of the house and then brought her son 3 photos of beautiful women to choose from. However, Cheoki hated her deeply. The secretary informed Cheoki that the media reporters had all arrived. Cheoki was about to announce a donation of 50 billion won to help disadvantaged families. Upon hearing this, Yanj angrily called his son a wastrel. Cheoki announced the donation of 50 billion won to the media. Yanj rushed out and told the reporters that the event was cancelled. Seeing his mother's embarrassed expression, Cheoki was delighted. Yanj scolded his son for acting on his own to make the donation. Cheoki explained that Chaiwon had not asked for a single penny after the divorce. It would be better to donate the money saved to a good cause. Meanwhile, Seon was waiting for Chaiwon to finish work. When Chaiwon came out, he quietly followed her in his car and waited with her for the bus. He stayed by her side silently, seeing her smile happily, and with her father by her side. Seon felt relieved. That night, Cheoki, wanting to defy his mother, brought 3 beautiful women home. Seeing this, Yanj was at a loss. Cheoki, drunk, tells his mother to choose the most suitable daughter-in-law from among the women. Yanj, angry, tries to drive the women out. Meanwhile, Chaiwon sees Cheoki's call and hangs up immediately. Cheoki calls many times, but Chaiwon doesn't answer. Yanj brought his son a suit and told him to go on a blind date in the afternoon. This time, the blind date was a wealthy and powerful young lady. However, Cheoki couldn't forget Chaiwon. He begged his mother to spare him. That day, Cheoki continued to call Chaiwon. Unexpectedly, this time the call went through. It turned out to be Chaiwon's colleague who answered. The owner had forgotten to take the phone with them. Cheoki hurriedly asked where they were. Cheoki then put on a suit. Yanj thought his son had finally agreed to go on the blind date. The colleague returned the phone to Chaiwon. Unexpectedly, Chaiwon encountered a difficult customer who was yelling at her. Cheoki arrived at that moment. He scolded the female customer. Then he pulled Chaiwon into the car. Chaiwon asked him where they were going. Cheoki rambled on about walking to the end together. Chaiwon took out her phone to call for help, but Cheoki snatched it away. He then threw it out the car window. That night, Cheoki took Chaiwon to a remote village area. He threatened Chaiwon that she had to stay with him that night. Chaiwon was terrified. She begged Cheoki to let her go home. Her father would be very worried if he didn't see her that night. Cheoki said he would cook dinner for Chaiwon himself. Hodong was waiting at the bus stop for Chaiwon to get off work, but after waiting for a long time, he still didn't see Chaiwon. He called Chaiwon, but the call couldn't be connected. Chaiwon begged Cheoki to let her call her father. She didn't want her father to worry. Cheoki picked up the phone and told Chaiwon to tell her father that something had come up and she couldn't come back. As soon as Chaiwon told her father that she couldn't come back, Cheoki cut the phone line. At that moment, Yanj also called his son but couldn't get through. Cheoki tried to get intimate with Chaiwon but was pushed away. Chaiwon firmly stated that she would never get back together with him. Seeing Chaiwon's firm attitude, Cheoki clenched his fists and made up his mind. He pulled Chaiwon into the car. Chaiwon thought Cheoki was taking her home. Cheoki told Chaiwon to sleep for a while. When Chaiwon woke up, she found herself taken to a remote place again. Suddenly, Cheoki slammed on the gas pedal, driving the car to the edge of a cliff. He told Chaiwon that she must either reconcile with him or die together. To his surprise, Chaiwon would rather die than reconcile with Cheoki. Cheoki didn't expect Chaiwon to be so resolute. In the end, he gave up. He ran out of the car, his emotions on the verge of collapse. Chaiwon feared Cheoki might do something reckless and rushed forward to stop him. Suddenly, Cheoki slipped and fell down the cliff with Chaiwon. He then brought the injured Chaiwon back to the villa. Instead of taking Chaiwon to the hospital, the next day, Yanj was worried when her son didn't come to work. She thought her son might have gone to find Chaiwon again. Sian felt bad when Chaiwon didn't respond to his messages. He went to Chaiwon's workplace. A colleague told him that Chaiwon hadn't come to work that day. Yesterday, a man had forcibly taken Chaiwon away. Yanj went to Chaiwon's maternal home to look for her. Chaiwon's grandmother saw her and immediately dumped a bag of flour on her head. The two then started fighting. The grandmother was pushed to the ground. Chaiwon's aunt saw this and immediately attacked Yanj. When Cheoki woke up, he saw that Chaiwon's injuries had worsened. He was so scared that he quickly called his mother. Siyun also arrived at Chaiwon's maternal home. Unexpectedly, she ran into Yanj. At that moment, Yanj received a call from her son. She couldn't go over, so she asked Siyun to handle it. Siyun saw the injured Chaiwon and was frantic with worrying. She heard Siyun's voice. Chaiwon forced her eyes open. Siyun picked up Chaiwon and prepared to take her to the hospital. Cheoki tried to stop her. Siyun said that Chaiwon no longer had anything to do with him. After receiving treatment, Chaiwon regained consciousness. Fortunately, every time she was in danger, Siyun was by her side. Cheoki returned home and was severely scolded by his mother. She also told Cheoki that Siyun had appeared at Chaiwon's parents' house. Perhaps the two had been having an affair. Cheoki, who was already suspicious, became even more convinced that Chaiwon had been involved with Siyun before the divorce. That night, Siyun took Chaiwon home. Chaiwon didn't know how to thank him. Every time she faced a difficulty, it was Siyun who helped her. Cheoki drank in silence, growing angrier by the minute. The next day, Chaiwon went to work. However, due to missing a day of work, Chaiwon was fired by her manager. That day, Yanj asked a matchmaker to find another suitable match for her son. This time, the woman's family was very influential. They were from a well-known company in their country. This made Yanj very happy. That day, Siyun was eating in the company cafeteria and happened to hear that the company was looking for a nutritionist. Siyun thought the job would be perfect for Chaiwon. Meanwhile, Chaiwon was on her way home when Cheoki stopped her. He asked Chaiwon what her relationship with Siyun was. Chaiwon refused to answer. He suspected that Chaiwon and Siyun had been having an affair. This left Chaiwon speechless. Meanwhile, Siyun gave Chaiwon's resume to her subordinate and asked him to give it to the Human Resources Department. That day, Cheoki happily agreed to his mother's request to go on a blind date. Yanj saw how obedient his son was and praised him for being filial. That night, Siyun came to tell Chaiwon the good news. However, Julie, who had always wanted to marry Siyun, saw them. She was surprised to learn about their relationship. Siyun tells Chaiwon that she found her a job as a nutritionist. She might receive an interview notice tomorrow. This makes Chaiwon, who just lost her job, very happy. Back home, Julie asks her brother if he knows that his sister-in-law Chaiwon has a close male friend. Seeing that her brother doesn't understand, Julie gives up on asking. At this moment, Chaiwon is also thinking about whether she should tell Siyun about her relationship with Julie. Early in the morning, the vicious Yanj shouted at his son to get up and get ready for a blind date. However, Cheoki couldn't muster any interest. At the same time, Chaiwon received a call about the interview. She dressed up carefully to make a good impression. On the other side, Yanj brought his son to the blind date. However, Cheoki looked dejected. The blind date was a bit awkward. Yanj showers the girl with compliments. Cheoki isn't interested in the girl. However, the girl Hanju is amused by him. She even says she wants to marry him. Meanwhile, Chaiwon arrives at the interview feeling nervous. Unexpectedly, she is pulled away by Julie. Julie blames Chaiwon for ruining her relationship with Siyun. Chaiwon tells Julie that her mother-in-law had also used Seon to force her to divorce Choki. This causes Julie to break down. Chaiwon's interview goes smoothly. Seon watches from afar. He doesn't want to interfere in his family's business, but he's still worried that Chaiwon won't pass the interview. That night, the matchmaker tells Yanj that the girl has agreed to date his son. This made Yanj very happy. Choki tells his mother that the rich girl is crazy. Julie is waiting for the results of Chaiwon's interview. Unexpectedly, the result is that Chaiwon has been hired. The subordinate also reports the results to Seon. Just then, Chaiwon happily calls Seon to tell him she got the job. She thanks Seon for his help. Julie returned home and burst into tears and scolded her mother for breaking up her relationship. Yanj demanded to meet the other party. The next day, Chaiwon's first day at work, she encountered Seon at the entrance. At that moment, Yanj also arrived. She saw Chaiwon and Seon walking together and prepared to tease them. Julie also saw her mother arrive. She was at a loss for words. Yanj mocked them, saying it was all thanks to her that they were together. But when she heard her subordinate refer to Seon as director, she was shocked beyond belief. She never imagined that the man her daughter had been dreaming of was actually Seon. Julie was so angry that she quickly pulled her mother away. This also came as a surprise to Chaiwon. She never expected Seon to hold such a high position. On her first day at work, Chaiwon actively greeted her colleagues. To her surprise, they all seemed to avoid her. They assumed she had gotten the job through connections. Yanj returned home. She regretted everything she had done to Seon. Julie found Chaiwon and told her to leave. Her stubborn and unreasonable personality was just like her mother's. That day, Choki told Hanju that he had scolded the other person and hoped they would never meet again. Unexpectedly, Choki's humiliation made Hanju fall for him. Since Chaiwon started working as a nutritionist in the employee cafeteria, Seon, who usually didn't eat there, became a regular customer. Julie returned home and cried uncontrollably. Yanj told her daughter that she would introduce her to a better man. Unexpectedly, Julie refused everyone except Seon. Seon, who was preparing to go home after work, noticed the lights were still on in the cafeteria. He walked in and saw Chaiwon alone, peeling onions. Seon stayed with Chaiwon. Seeing Chaiwon tied her hair up, he was reminded of his late girlfriend. At that moment, his gaze toward Chaiwon was already filled with obsession. Meanwhile, Choki accidentally drove his car near Chaiwon's house. He didn't understand why he had come here. Just then, he saw Seon sending Chaiwon home. This almost made him lose control and get out of the car. Suddenly, he remembered the harsh words Chaiwon had said to him. Choki resisted the urge. When he returned home, his mother told him that Hanju from Taishan Group wanted the two of them to get married as soon as possible. This drove Choki nearly mad. He never expected the other party to insist on marrying him. After the morning meeting, the chairman specifically praised Chaiwon. He was very satisfied with the meal. Chaiwon's hard work had not been in vain. Her colleagues were also impressed by her character. At that moment, Julie called Chaiwon out again and told her to leave immediately. Chaiwon said she had no right to interfere in her life. Seeing this, Julie said she would have her mother prepare some startup funds for Chaiwon so she could leave. That day, Hanju asked Choki to meet her. She actually begged Choki to save her from her family. She then told Choki that she was the child of her mother's extramarital affair. Everyone in her family despised her. Facing this girl who trusted him so much, Choki was actually moved. That day, while at work, Chaiwon received a call from her mother-in-law. She asked Chaiwon to meet her downstairs. It turned out she had come for her daughter. She gave Chaiwon 5 billion won to leave the company. However, all of this was witnessed by the company's chairman's wife, Seon's mother, Siju. No matter how much Yanj offered, Chaiwon firmly refused to resign. Later, Julie stormed in to confront Chaiwon about why she hadn't taken the money and left. But seeing Chaiwon so resolute, she was both surprised and furious. That evening, after work, Julie blamed her mother for not handling the matter properly. Yanj also didn't expect things to turn out this way. As a newcomer to the company, Chaiwon accepted all the drinks offered by her colleagues. For Chaiwon's sake, Seon also came to this kind of place for the first time. Seeing Chaiwon drunk and acting strangely, he found it both amusing and funny. Chaiwon, who had drunk too much, was staggering as she walked. Seon silently followed behind her. The next morning, Julie came to Seon's office. Suddenly, she saw the fish soup Chaiwon had brought for Seon. Julie was furious. She tore up the note and took the thermos. Seon, who was unaware of what had happened, later found out from Chaiwon. Seeing the two of them laughing and joking, Julie felt a growing sense of crisis. She couldn't let them continue like this. On the other side, Yanj had finally climbed his way into a wealthy family. Choki was about to marry the heiress of this wealthy family. He told Hanju that his mother wasn't someone easy to deal with. Once he married her, her life in her in-laws' home wouldn't be easy. Hanju asked him if he would marry her. Choki said he would give her an answer after asking someone else. The opportunistic Yanj pretended to care about Hanju when he saw her. Choki was speechless when he saw this. That night, Choki came to see Chaiwon again. He asked Chaiwon to give him 5 minutes. He told Chaiwon that he was about to get married. He wanted to ask Chaiwon one last time if they really couldn't start over. Chaiwon clearly tells Choki that it's impossible between them. Before parting, he wants to hug Chaiwon one last time. Back home, Choki tells his mother that he has agreed to marry. Yanj is overjoyed that his son has finally agreed. Soon, the wedding day arrives. Yanj is very happy to see his daughter-in-law, but to his surprise, his daughter-in-law was holding a small dog. Hanju handed the dog to her mother-in-law to see. Unexpectedly, Yanj was afraid of dogs. He was so scared that he fell to the ground. At that moment, Choki, who had come to the hotel for the wedding, unexpectedly saw Chaiwon. This made Choki's heart race again. Just then, Hanju appeared. Chaiwon saw this and turned around and left. It turned out that Chaiwon was there to participate in an academic exchange program. Unexpectedly, she ran into Julie in the restroom. Julie mocked Chaiwon. Choki, who was about to get married, showed no signs of joy. Instead, he was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Yanj rushed over to stop his son. Choki told his mother to cancel the wedding. He was still thinking about Chaiwon. Yanj, seeing this, threatened his son with his life. If his son didn't continue with the wedding, the two of them would jump into the river together. On the other side, Seon looked at his watch and estimated that Chaiwon's academic exchange event was almost over. He planned to ask Chaiwon, who had just received her salary, to treat him to a big meal. The wedding had just ended, and the family was preparing to send Choki and Hanju on their honeymoon. Unexpectedly, Seon walked over at that moment. Julie was startled and quickly hid herself. If Seon found out they were related, her dream of marrying him would be shattered. Yanj also grew tense upon seeing Seon. She approached him to greet him, but Seon showed no interest in her. Chaiwon was also surprised to see Seon there. Seon asked Chaiwon to treat him to dinner. Julie secretly followed them. Seon knew that Chaiwon must have seen her ex-husband's wedding today. Feeling uncomfortable, Chaiwon pretended to be strong in front of him. After dinner, Seon took Chaiwon to play baseball and taught her carefully. He told her to let out all her unhappiness. When Chaiwon returned home, she saw her father looking haggard. It turns out that her father, who has been single for 30 years, is in love with the bar owner Kun-hee. However, this relationship is strongly opposed by her father's mother-in-law. Her father is torn between love and family. Chaiwon hopes her father can find someone else. Late at night, Chaiwon recalls the scene of Choki's wedding, saying she doesn't feel anything is a lie. Unexpectedly, Choki calls Chaiwon at that moment. However, Hanju witnessed the call. Hanju couldn't bear the humiliation and canceled a honeymoon. Yanj was delighted with the dowry given by her in-laws. Just as she was rejoicing, Choki suddenly returned. Hanju also went to the hotel alone. Yanj was so enraged by her son that she was on the verge of losing her mind. The next day, Julie began to frame Chaiwon. She sent her a fruit basket with a note saying Seon. This caused the company employees to start gossiping about her relationship with Seon. Meanwhile, Yanj told his son to bring Hanju back immediately. Choki then found Hanju and apologized, begging her to come back with him. Unexpectedly, Hanju's mother arrived at that moment. Surprisingly, she slapped her daughter across the face. She hoped Hanju wouldn't cause any trouble. That day, Chaiwon unexpectedly bumped into the company president's wife. Siju suddenly recalled a scene she had witnessed earlier. She mistakenly believed that Chaiwon was a greedy woman. Julie, who had just come downstairs, was surprised to see Siju and Chaiwon together. She hurried over to separate the two. Julie then began to slander Chaiwon, saying that Chaiwon had forced her brother to marry her. On this day, Yeonjae's wealthy in-laws came to visit. They even brought a butler with them. The deeper meaning was to monitor her family's every move. This made Yeonjae very unhappy. After work, Seon offered to give Chaiwon a ride home. Chaiwon thought about what Julie had said and felt conflicted, but she got into the car anyway. Then Chaiwon suddenly asked Seon if he liked her. Seon was so scared that he slammed on the brakes. He then hurriedly made up an excuse to get out of the situation. On the way home, Chaiwon ran into her father and Kun-hee. Seeing that her father and Kun-hee had reconciled, Chaiwon was very happy. On the other side, Choki took Hanju home. Yeonjae was a little dissatisfied with his new daughter-in-law's behavior of only petting the dog. Seeing that the daughter-in-law of a wealthy family was unhappy, Yeonjae's attitude immediately softened. The butler told Hanju that it was time to go to bed. Yeonjae didn't seem to be very accustomed to the rules of a wealthy family. The butler asked Choki why he wasn't going with them. Choki, who didn't want to sleep, followed them upstairs. Yanj felt helpless toward the butler but couldn't do anything. Cheoki noticed that his new wife seemed a bit out of place. He lied that he had documents to handle and told his wife to go to sleep first. Meanwhile, Siju returned home and told her husband and son that Chaiwon was a woman skilled at creating scandals. After being slandered by Yanj and Julie, Chaiwon was utterly despicable in Siju's eyes. Fortunately, the chairman was reasonable and scolded his wife for not listening to both sides. Back in her room, Siyeon recalled Chaiwon asking her if she liked her. He thought Chaiwon was too direct. He didn't know if she was naive or thick-skinned. The new daughter-in-law's first breakfast at her in-law's house. Unexpectedly, Hanju didn't eat. Instead, she feeds the puppy at the table. This makes Yeonjae very unhappy. Hanju is scolded and feels very upset. Later, Yeonjae calls his son to his room. He complains that his daughter-in-law seems a bit off. Meanwhile, company employees are discussing the ambiguous relationship between Siyeon and Chaiwon. Siyeon, standing behind them, hears the rumors and feels helpless. Siyeon recalled Chaiwon's words, which made him feel something was off. He went to Chaiwon's office to find her, but she wasn't there. He looked at the fruit basket and realized it was sent to Chaiwon in his name. Chaiwon was holding a large bowl of hot soup. At that moment, a colleague told her that the department head was looking for her. In a moment of carelessness, Chaiwon was scalded. Siyeon hurriedly carried Chaiwon to the hospital. However, Julie saw everything. She went to the cafeteria to ask what happened. She happened to see Chaiwon's phone there. Julie had another evil idea. After being treated by the doctor, Chaiwon was fine. At that moment, Julie followed her and took a photo with her phone. After taking the photo, she put the phone back in Chaiwon's office. On the company's website, Chaiwon's own account had uploaded photos of her and Siyeon. This made Siyeon extremely angry. It turned out that Julie was behind everything. Julie warned Chaiwon to immediately stay away from Siyeon. Chaiwon angrily said that she wouldn't be defeated so easily. She then returned to the office to tell Siyeon everything. But halfway through, she gave up. She felt that explaining everything now was pointless. However, unexpectedly, Yeonjae called Siyeon to ask him to meet up. Julie was very nervous, and she heard her mother was going to meet Siyeon. Yeonjae said she had planned this all along. She wanted her daughter to marry Siyeon. She decided to reshape her image in Siyeon's eyes. She asked Siyeon to take good care of Chaiwon. She regretted what she had done to Chaiwon in the past. Chaiwon ran into Siyeon while waiting for the elevator. The two of them still had unresolved misunderstandings. Neither of them spoke to each other. To avoid awkwardness, Chaiwon decided to take the stairs. On the other side, Yeonjae hoped that her wealthy daughter-in-law would give her a grandson Soo. Unexpectedly, she was ruthlessly rejected by Hanju. She didn't want to have children. Yeonjae was furious after hearing this. She had just chased Chaiwon away. Now, this wealthy daughter-in-law had only been married for less than a week, and already there were problems between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Hanju confides in Cheoki about not wanting to have children. She herself was born out of her mother's extramarital affair. She doesn't want to pass on her genes to her own children. Chaiwon, who is still working late, thinks about how Siyeon accused her without even asking for clarification. This makes her very angry. Yeonjae comes to talk to his daughter-in-law. Seeing that her daughter-in-law isn't in the room, she gets another idea. She remembers Hanju saying that she and Cheoki didn't marry to have children. She suspects her daughter-in-law is secretly using contraception. She starts searching through her belongings, but Hanju catches her in the act. Hanju angrily tells her mother-in-law to leave her room immediately. She's not as easy to bully as Chaiwon. Yeonjae finally met her match. Hanju then started screaming. She told Cheoki that she was so scared she couldn't breathe. This left Yeonjae speechless. Cheoki complained that his mother was causing trouble with his new wife again. That day, Chaiwon ran into Siyeon and Julie. In front of Chaiwon, Julie deliberately acted affectionate towards Siyeon. After work, Chaiwon received a call from Cheoki. She told him not to call her anymore. She said his wife would be heartbroken if she found out. Before Cheoki could say anything else, Chaiwon suddenly hung up the phone. Cheoki couldn't stop thinking about Chaiwon. Julie asked Siyeon a strange question. She said, if she were the daughter of someone who had committed a heinous crime, would she treat her the same way she does now? Julie, emboldened by alcohol, blurted out her true feelings. She was afraid that one day Siyeon would find out who her mother was. Julie, who was drunk and unconscious, received a call from her mother. Siyeon answered the phone for her. Yeonjae was shocked to hear it was Siyeon. Seeing that Siyeon was about to arrive, she panicked and hid. At that moment, Siyeon recalled the scene of sending Chaiwon home in the past. He remembered that it was Chaiwon's in-law's house. Suddenly, he realized the relationship between Chaiwon and Julie. The next morning, Julie woke up and learned that Siyeon had brought her home. This terrified her. She feared her identity would be exposed. To win Siyeon, she must drive Chaiwon out of the company. Early in the morning, Chaiwon was diligently inspecting the quality of the vegetables. Siyeon, who had come to work, stood in the distance watching Chaiwon. When Julie saw this, she began to slander Chaiwon Chaiwon again. On the other side, the company employees were giving gifts to Chaiwon. It turned out that her nephew had applied for a position at the company. He asked Chaiwon to help him. The employees were convinced that Chaiwon had a relationship with the general manager. However, this scene was also witnessed by Seon's subordinates. That day, Seju and Yanj were having lunch together. She asked her son to bring Julie along. Seon, who already knew about their relationship, decided to use this opportunity to reveal everything to avoid further complications in the future. Seju told Yanj that Seon would be coming over with Julie shortly. Yanj panicked upon hearing this. He made an excuse to go to the restroom. Julie, who was in Seon's car, saw her mother's call and also felt panicked. Seon, who was already aware of their relationship, watched Julie act. Yanj explained the situation to his daughter. She then told Seju that she had to rush back to handle an urgent matter at her company. Unbeknownst to her, Seon's car arrived just as she stepped out. She was so scared that she hid behind the car. Julie, feeling guilty, nearly choked on a sip of water. That day, another employee came to give Chaiwon a gift, asking her to persuade the department head to let him work at the headquarters. This scene was also witnessed by someone. The subordinate reported to Seon that Chaiwon was accepting bribes in the company under his name. This made Seon very angry. Chaiwon gathered the cafeteria staff and told them that she had no relationship with the department head. However, the employees didn't believe her. At that moment, Seon came to find Chaiwon and scolded her for her actions. Chaiwon, who was wrongly accused, felt terrible. She found Julie. She wanted to tell Seon about her relationship with Julie. Julie saw Seon coming over and immediately knelt down in front of Chaiwon. She wanted to use this to deepen Seon's misunderstanding of Chaiwon. Chaiwon wanted to find Seon to tell him the truth. However, Seon said he already knew about their relationship. He said he had no interest in Chaiwon's true nature anymore. Hearing Seon's decisive words, Chaiwon couldn't help but shed tears. Julie told her mother that Seon already knew they were mother and daughter. She had no hope of being with Seon anymore. Seon drinks alone in silence. He feels that Chaiwon is using him. Chaiwon, who has been wronged, vents her anger. At that moment, the drunk Seon mistakes Julie for his late girlfriend and kisses her. However, Chaiwon witnesses this scene. Julie, seeing this, kisses Seon even more passionately to provoke Chaiwon. Having taken advantage of the situation, she doesn't forget to mock Chaiwon. Julie then takes Seon home. Julie deliberately leaves tears in her eyes. Seju asks her what happened. Julie takes the opportunity to reveal that Seon mistook her for his ex-girlfriend and kissed her. Seju immediately apologizes on Seon's behalf. Meanwhile, Yanj is deeply worried upon seeing his daughter return so late. Julie returns to her room to pack her belongings, preparing to run away from home. She tells her mother that she loves Seon and cannot lose him. Seeing her daughter so heartbroken, Yanj rushes to comfort her. Seon, sobering up, learned from his mother about the things he had done. This made him feel guilty as well. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was asleep, Julie packed her suitcase and drove away. Seeing that her daughter had left a note and run away, Yanj was frantic with worry. The next day, she came to see Seon in person. She immediately knelt down before Seon, begging him to save her and her daughter. She explained that Julie had left a note and run away from home. She pleaded with Seon not to abandon Julie. All the bad things that had happened were her fault. To her surprise, when she went downstairs, she bumped into Chaiwon, the cruel old woman. Yanj blamed all her daughter's misfortunes on Chaiwon. Chaiwon didn't even bother to argue with her. Seon came downstairs and brought Yanj's bag to her. When he saw Chaiwon, he asked her if she didn't want to explain the rumors. Chaiwon said that she didn't need to explain to someone who didn't want to listen. Back in the office, a colleague told Chaiwon that the food supplier wanted to invite her out for dinner after work. They wanted to get to know Chaiwon better. However, Chaiwon directly refused and said that as long as the other party provided good ingredients, even if they didn't have a good relationship outside of work, they could still work together very happily. Her colleague criticized her for being inflexible. Chaiwon, who was serious about her work, was working overtime again. At that moment, the cleaning lady, who was also working overtime, came over to ask for a glass of water. Upon learning that they hadn't eaten yet, Chaiwon personally cooked a cup of instant noodles for the cleaning ladies. Surprisingly, everyone liked the cup noodles. Seon, who saw this, also asked for a cup to try. Meanwhile, Julie, who had run away from home, was sitting alone by the sea. She listened to the messages left by her mother and Seon. She felt that everything was ruined. On the other side, Seon's father returned home in a rage. He had heard at the company that Seon and Chaiwon were dating. He also found out that Chaiwon had accepted bribes at the company using Seon's name. Seju then remembered a scene she had seen earlier, and the moment she bumped into Chaiwon at the company. The next day, she blocked Chaiwon at the company and slapped her across the face, before scolding her for having no right to tow with Seon. Seon rushed over to stop his mother from continuing to hit Chaiwon. He expressed his disappointment in his mother. Seon then chased after Chaiwon to talk to her properly, but she refused. On the bus, Chaiwon recalled her experiences after her divorce. Siyun's mother's humiliation, Julie's frame-up, her vicious mother-in-law's threats and intimidation. She felt helpless. Siyun was waiting for her at Chaiwon's door. He wanted to talk to Chaiwon, but Chaiwon refused to communicate with him. Back home, his father scolded his son for the bad rumors about him and Chaiwon at the company. In his emotional state, the chairman suddenly felt severe chest pain. Siyun rushed his father to the hospital for emergency treatment. Fortunately, the surgery was timely, and his father was temporarily out of danger. That day, Chaiwon, who had come to work, encountered Siyun in the elevator. Unexpectedly, in the elevator, Siyun encountered the father of his late ex-girlfriend, and the man was holding his daughter's ashes. It turned out that the mother of his ex-girlfriend, Yoon-si, had been having the same dream recently. In the dream, Yoon-si told her mother she felt suffocated and begged her to send her to a distant place. Yoon-si's parents decided to scatter her ashes in the river so she could go where she wanted to go. Before sending Yoon-si off, they wanted her to see Siyun one last time. Meanwhile, Yanj was troubled by his daughter-in-law's outburst. The fact that her daughter had run away from home was weighing heavily on her heart. She no longer hides it from her son. She tells Choki that Siyun, who falsely accused Chaiwon of having an affair, is actually Julie's boyfriend. Hearing this, Choki is furious. He then goes to Siyun's company. To his surprise, he sees Chaiwon there. What makes him even angrier is that Chaiwon is also working there. Choki was certain that this was all Siyun's doing. Just then, he saw Siyun walking toward him. Choki rushed over and grabbed Siyun by the collar, intending to hit him, but he was knocked to the ground by a punch from Siyun. Seeing that Choki was still trying to fight, Chaiwon rushed over to stop him. She took Choki to the office and helped him clean his wounds. Siyun felt very uncomfortable seeing this. Choki took all the money and cards from his pocket and gave them to Chaiwon, telling her not to work here anymore. Chaiwon angrily accused him of his behavior and told him to leave immediately. Choki told Chaiwon that he still hadn't registered his marriage with Hongju and begged her to take him back. Chaiwon pleaded with him to come to his senses. Siyun received a call from his late girlfriend's father. He told Siyun that Julie had gone to his house. That evening, Siyun drove to find Julie. However, he saw Julie walking toward the river. To stop Julie, Siyun told her he would try his best to start over with her. Later, Siyun took Julie to visit his father. His mother tells Siyun that his father has been diagnosed with early-stage stomach cancer. They want Siyun and Julie to get engaged first. Julie deliberately says that getting engaged is too early. Unexpectedly, Siyun directly agrees to the engagement. Early that morning, Yanj apologizes to his daughter-in-law for going through her drawer earlier. She then tells her daughter-in-law that today is the anniversary of her late father-in-law's death. She asks her daughter-in-law to help prepare. Hongju told her that she had to attend a class reunion that night. Hearing this, the in-law's expressions turned sour. Yanj scolded his daughter-in-law. Hongju said that paying respects to a father-in-law she had never met was hypocritical. Back in the room, Choki scolded his wife for being ill-mannered. Hongju angrily said that she was just the way she was. Meanwhile, Chaiwon's father and Kunhee had already reached the stage of discussing marriage. Chaiwon also strongly supported her father finding another partner. When she heard Chaiwon call her future mother Kunhee, who had grown up in an orphanage, was very moved. Hongju returned home after attending the gathering. Yanj said he wanted to have a serious talk with her. He scolded Hongju for being abnormal and impolite. However, Hongju's emotional response left Yanj speechless. The next day, Hongju unexpectedly returned to her parents' home. Yanj was nearly driven mad by his daughter-in-law. That day, Misu, the mother-in-law, came over. Both mother and son were a little intimidated by Misu's hostile demeanor. Misu looked at Choki and said she was very angry about her daughter's behavior. Yanj saw this and began to list his wife's faults. Misu directly asked why Choki hadn't slept with his wife yet. She then pointed out that the reason Choki was acting this way was because he still couldn't forget his ex-wife. Choki had no response. Yanj tried to continue arguing, but Misu took out a prenuptial agreement and asked Choki to sign it. The agreement stipulated that if he had an affair, he would have to give half of his property to Hongju. In addition, he had to sleep with his wife at least once a week. Otherwise, he would have to pay 10 million won in compensation. Choki couldn't bear such humiliation and left immediately. Yanj originally disagreed as well. However, Misu then said it was acceptable because her company's products were about to be launched on TV shopping. Yanj had gone to great lengths to have his son marry Hongju for these resources and connections. Upon returning home, Yanj had his son sign the agreement. He even knelt down before him. With no other choice, Choki signed. The next day, Hongju returned. Yanj greeted her with a smile and helped her carry her bag. She took the dog with her, leaving her son and daughter-in-law to spend a pleasant evening together. However, she eavesdropped on her son and daughter-in-law's conversation. She was scolded by the housekeeper. Seeing this, the housekeeper scolded her harshly. That day, Cheoki looked at Chaiwon's photo. He couldn't stop thinking about Chaiwon. Yanj burst in without knocking. Cheoki quickly hid Chaiwon's photo. Yanj told his son that Seon, who was going to get engaged to Julie, was coming over. He told him to get up and tidy up. Cheoki thought that if Seon married his sister, he would have more opportunities to be with Chaiwon. In his excitement, he dropped Chaiwon's photo on the ground. Unexpectedly, Hanju saw the photo. That day, Chaiwon's father and Kunhee finally got married. Chaiwon took the stage to express her love for her father and stepmother. The family embraced each other excitedly. On the other side, Cheoki discovered that his mother had secretly registered his marriage with Hongju. It turned out that Cheoki had been delaying the marriage registration all along in hopes of reconciling with Chaiwon. He never expected his plans to be ruined by his mother. This made Cheoki furious. Hongju saw this and scolded her husband for his behavior. Unexpectedly, this scene was witnessed by Seon, who was visiting their home for the first time. Hongju, furious, decided to return to her parents' home. Facing this family, Seon felt a bit uncomfortable. Later, Seon and Cheoki sat together. Both of them felt awkward. Cheoki broke the awkward silence. He said that his mother had given Chaiwon 5 billion won to leave Seon's company. He also mentioned that when he was pursuing Chaiwon, his mother had given her money to break up with him. However, Chaiwon had refused both times. Seon suddenly recalled what her mother had told her and realized something. To completely drive Chaiwon out of the company, Julie bribed Chaiwon's colleague and gave her some money to do as she instructed. Cheoki approached his mother to cancel his engagement to Hongju and return to Chaiwon. However, Yanj firmly refused. After work, Julie saw Seon and Chaiwon alone together and became furious. Seon, who had already arrived at the underground parking lot, remembered that she had left her briefcase with Chaiwon. However, their conversation was overheard by Seon. The next day, Seon was preparing to take Chaiwon to handle official business. Unexpectedly, they were stopped by employees from the inspection team. They had received a report that Chaiwon had accepted bribes from a supplier. Back in the office, Seon asked Julie if she had anything to say about Chaiwon taking bribes. Hearing this, Julie felt inexplicably nervous. She then deliberately slandered Chaiwon. Seon was very disappointed after hearing what Julie said. Meanwhile, Chaiwon was cooperating with the inspection team's investigation. The inspection team wanted to check Chaiwon's bank account. They asked Chaiwon if she agreed. Chaiwon had done nothing wrong, so she felt confident. After leaving, Chaiwon immediately realized that Julie must have been behind it. She found Julie. Facing Julie's repeated slander, Chaiwon could no longer tolerate it. Julie saw Seon looking over, so Chaiwon slapped her across the face. To her surprise, Julie secretly smiled. She thought Chaiwon had been outsmarted again, but when she looked up, Seon was gone. Seon was waiting for Chaiwon at the company entrance. He teased her about her strength. It turned out that Seon had witnessed the argument between Chaiwon and Julie. Not only did he not help Julie, who was about to marry him, but he also helped Chaiwon carry her bag. Seon then told Chaiwon that he wouldn't let her suffer an unjust accusation. At the hospital, Yanj visited Seon's parents. The two spoke of Chaiwon with great hatred. In their eyes, Chaiwon was nothing but a wicked woman. After finishing her work, Chaiwon used her lunch break to find the chairman of the supplier company. She asked him to come to the company to testify on her behalf. Unexpectedly, the chairman actually transferred 3 million won to Chaiwon. It turned out that the chairman had seen a note in the return apple boxes. The note had Chaiwon's bank account number on it, so he transferred the money. This made Chaiwon feel very wronged. Seon quietly observed from the car. Yanj was on the phone with his daughter, talking about how Chaiwon was about to be fired. Julie looked delighted at Chaiwon's misfortune. Cheoki heard his mother say that Chaiwon was being investigated by the company's internal affairs department for accepting bribes at work. He was very anxious. He then went to Chaiwon's company and asked how much money it would take to clear Chaiwon's name. He threw all the money in his pocket onto the table. If that wasn't enough, he could borrow more from him. Seon and Julie heard the commotion. Cheoki spoke up for Chaiwon. He then scolded Julie harshly. After work, Julie angrily asked her brother why he went to help Chaiwon. Yanj also scolded his son for doing such a thing. Cheoki said he wasn't done with Chaiwon yet. However, all of this was overheard by Hongju. Yanj tried to explain for his son, but was harshly scolded by Hongju. Meanwhile, Seon thought about the harsh words he had said to Chaiwon and felt he had been too rash. After an investigation by the audit department, Chaiwon was fired from the company. However, after investigating, Seon found the person who had framed Chaiwon. He promised the person that if they revealed everything, he would not pursue legal action. Upon learning that Chaiwon had been fired, Julie couldn't resist mocking her a few more times. Seon called Julie into his office. He gave her 3 chances to confess what she had been hiding from him. To his surprise, Julie refused to admit anything. However, when her subordinate, whom she had bribed, came in and confessed everything, she realized that her scheme had been uncovered by Seon. Julie tried to explain. but Seon said it was too late. At that moment, Chaiwon was called over by Seon. Julie, who was completely defeated, knelt down before Chaiwon. She apologized to Chaiwon and begged for her forgiveness. Seon also apologized to Chaiwon for the misunderstanding he had had toward her during this time. Chaiwon hoped to keep her distance from Seon in the future to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings. Julie returned home and burst into tears. She told her mother everything she had done to frame Chaiwon. Now that the truth had been fully exposed, she feared that Seon would no longer agree to marry her. Yanj brought his daughter to see Seon's mother. He demanded that Julie kneel before her and admit her mistakes. They then recounted the entire incident to Seju. The mother and daughter cried and pleaded for sympathy. Seju came to find her son and told him that Julie and her mother had already approached him. She criticized their despicable behavior. Yanj even set the engagement date for Seon and Julie for next month. This left Seon feeling helpless. Meanwhile, Cheoki secretly went to see Chaiwon, and every moment was filmed by Hanju's people. This made Hanju increasingly angry. Drunk, Cheoki even shouted Chaiwon's name. Yanj heard this and hurriedly explained to Hanju that it was Cheoki's secretary's name. Fearing Hanju would be angry, she quickly gave her a pearl necklace. Julie came to Seon's house to beg for her forgiveness. Seon was completely disappointed in her and didn't want to say much. Soon after, Julie tried on her engagement dress. Yanj complained that Seon didn't care about the engagement. Seon didn't want to get engaged, but her mother had already sent out the wedding invitations. Seon really couldn't understand why her mother was in such a hurry for her to get engaged. That day, Julie came to give Chaiwon the engagement invitation. However, she didn't really want Chaiwon to attend her engagement ceremony. She just wanted to provoke Chaiwon. That night, the employees dragged Chaiwon to join them for a dinner party. Thanks to Chaiwon's help, they successfully signed a contract. Seeing this, Chaiwon had no choice but to agree. Julie made an excuse that she couldn't go. To her surprise, Seon didn't accompany her. This made Julie very upset. Chaiwon was afraid she would drink too much, so he secretly poured all the alcohol from his glass into another glass. Seon thought the glass contained plain water and drank it all in one gulp. After drinking, Seon didn't feel anything. Chaiwon seemed to notice that Seon's sense of taste was off. After the dinner party, Seon offered to drive Chaiwon home. Chaiwon had no choice but to tell Seon that he had drunk alcohol. Seon told Chaiwon that he had lost his sense of taste. 3 years ago, he had deeply loved a woman. However, she had died in a car accident. Since then, he had lost both the person he loved most and his sense of taste. Chaiwon encouraged him to cheer up. His sense of taste and love would surely return. The engagement ceremony was about to begin, but Seon hadn't shown up yet. Julie believed Seon would definitely come. Her mother scolded her for deluding herself. Fortunately, Seon arrived at the last moment. Julie looked relieved, but Seon told them he had come to cancel the engagement ceremony. Seon then announced the cancellation of the engagement in front of relatives and friends. Upon hearing this, Julie collapsed to the ground. Seon's father was so enraged that he suffered a heart attack. Cheoki angrily punched Seon. Yanj urged his son to beat Seon severely. Seon did not fight back. The engagement ceremony ended in this manner. At home, the father scolded his son for canceling the engagement. Seon said he wanted to start over. Julie, who had been full of hope, was heartbroken. However, she blamed everything on Chaiwon. Later, Yanj brought his daughter to Chaiwon's parents' house. As soon as they entered the door, he started shouting and screaming. Upon seeing Chaiwon, Yanj began verbally abusing her and even tried to hit her. Julie was even more convinced that Chaiwon was the culprit. Just as he was about to hit her, he was stopped by Kun-hee. After causing a big commotion, the mother and daughter hurriedly left. Once Chaiwon's father and uncles returned, they would be in trouble. Cheoki found out that today was Hanju's birthday. He planned to take Hanju out to dinner to celebrate. He told Hanju to go upstairs and change clothes. After Yanj and Julie returned home, Julie ran back to her room while crying. After learning from her mother that her sister had cancelled the wedding because of Chaiwon, Cheoki immediately ran out. Hanju, who had just finished changing clothes, felt helpless when she saw her husband leave suddenly. Chaiwon had just caught her breath when she saw Cheoki's text message saying he was outside the door. Cheoki wouldn't allow Chaiwon to be with Seon. However, Chaiwon didn't want to listen to him. Julie received a call from Seon's mother. Seju apologized to her and gave Julie hope that she would persuade her son to change his mind. Yanj angrily told the other party not to bother her daughter anymore. That night, Seon asked Julie to talk. Julie asked Seon what the problem was. Seon admitted that he didn't like her. Julie asked if it was because of Chaiwon. Seon didn't give a clear answer. Back home, Julie felt utterly defeated, believing everything was over. Cheoki returned home and only then realized it was his wife's birthday. He brought her a birthday cake and made a flower out of balloons for Hanju. This made Hanju very happy. The two, who had no feelings for each other, unintentionally developed an unbreakable bond. On the other side, Seon was thinking about Chaiwon. Chaiwon also couldn't fall asleep. The next morning, Julie remembered the harsh words Si-yeon had said to her. She started to lose her mind again. Chaiwon was taking something out of the storage room. Unexpectedly, the box almost fell and hit her. Fortunately, Si-yeon blocked it in time. Si-yeon, who hadn't eaten all day, came to find Chaiwon to eat. However, Julie saw everything. Si-yeon decided to tell Chaiwon what was on her mind today. Julie watched them from inside her car. Just as they were about to leave, Si-yeon received a call and had to return to the office to retrieve some documents. Unexpectedly, Julie came to the car and forcibly took Chaiwon away. Si-yeon hurriedly hailed a taxi and followed closely behind. Julie was unwilling to let the person she loved be taken away by Chaiwon. She stepped on the gas pedal hard. The car sped up faster and faster. To stop the car, Chaiwon began to struggle for the steering wheel. Soon, the car crashed into the roadside guardrail. Seeing this scene reminded Si-yeon of his ex-girlfriend Yoon-si's car accident. Si-yeon pulled Chaiwon out of the car. Julie was heartbroken at the sight. Meanwhile, Yanj was shocked to learn that Julie was in the hospital. After being examined by the doctor, Chaiwon was found to be unharmed. Julie had a broken leg. Yanj scolded Chaiwon harshly upon seeing this. Si-yeon told Cheo-ki that he had fallen in love with Chaiwon. He warned him not to bother Chaiwon anymore. Chaiwon's parents rush over upon hearing about the accident. Fortunately, their daughter is unharmed. Yanj learns that her daughter had intended to die with Chaiwon. This enrages her. Upon hearing her mother mention Chaiwon's name, Julie feels like she is going to lose her mind. Cheo-ki bows to Chaiwon's family. However, Ho-dong didn't want to acknowledge him. When he saw Si-yeon and Chaiwon's family seeming so harmonious, Cheo-ki was furious. The next day, Kun-hee noticed a scar on Chaiwon's forehead. She felt heartbroken. At that moment, Si-yeon came to pick up Chaiwon for work. Kun-hee was overjoyed at the sight. She felt that the two of them were very well suited for each other. Early the next morning, Cheo-ki came to harass Chaiwon again. Chaiwon didn't want to deal with him. Seeing her daughter being hurt again, Kun-hee came to the hospital and warned them that if they hurt her daughter again, they would have to face the consequences. Later, Si-yeon found Chaiwon and confessed his feelings for her. However, Chaiwon didn't accept his feelings because she wasn't ready yet. Si-yeon tells Chaiwon that he will wait for her forever. For Chaiwon, who has been hurt in love before, it takes a lot of courage to start the new relationship. Back home, Cheo-ki becomes increasingly angry. He packs his bags, takes some sleeping pills, and runs away from home. Yanj, who is taking care of her daughter at the hospital, nearly faints upon hearing the news. On her way home, Chaiwon receives a call from Yanj. She tells Chaiwon that Cheo-ki has run away from home and asks her to call her immediately. She hears from him. The call ends, and Chaiwon immediately receives a call from Cheo-ki. He wants to hear Chaiwon's voice one last time before he dies. The kind-hearted Chaiwon rushes over to stop him. Han-ju receives a call from her mother. Her mother tells her that they have found Cheo-ki's location. Meanwhile, Chaiwon was trying to take the sleeping pills from Cheo-ki's hands. Just then, Cheo-ki's mother-in-law burst in with her daughter and the police. Chaiwon and Cheo-ki were arrested on unknown charges. The scene of them being taken away by the police was witnessed by Si-ju. Upon hearing the news, Si-yeon rushed over and took Chaiwon away and safely brought her home. Kun-hee invited Si-yeon into the house to sit down. Unexpectedly, Si-yeon readily agreed. This made Chaiwon a little embarrassed. Inside the house, Si-yeon paid his respects to his maternal grandparents. Everyone in the family liked him very much. His grandmother thought that Si-yeon also worked in the cafeteria like Chaiwon. Unexpectedly, Chaiwon's maternal uncle knew Si-yeon. He said he was the only son of the company president where Chaiwon worked and held an important position. What surprised Kun-hee even more was that Si-yeon's mother was her childhood friend from the orphanage. Cheo-ki returned home. Yeon-jae blamed her son for bringing shame upon her. Chaiwon felt inferior and thought she wasn't good enough for Si-yeon. However, Si-yeon was determined to be with her. Ho-dong also thought his daughter wasn't good enough for him. Kun-hee also said that Si-yeon's mother was very domineering, and he didn't want his daughter to go through that kind of painful life again. Hearing these words made Chaiwon feel a little lonely. Back home, Si-ju told her son that she wouldn't agree to him being with Chaiwon. The next day, Si-ju came to the company to find Chaiwon. It turned out she wanted Chaiwon to resign voluntarily. Soon, Chaiwon prepared her resignation letter. Seeing Si-yeon coming, she quickly hid the letter. Si-yeon wanted to have lunch with Chaiwon. Chaiwon carefully prepared a delicious meal for Si-yeon to help him regain his sense of taste. Meanwhile, Kun-hee and Si-ju received a call at the same time. They learned that the orphanage director who had taken care of them since childhood was about to pass away. He hoped to see them one last time. Chaiwon packed her belongings and looked around the familiar room, recalling the memories she shared with Si-yeon. Si-yeon had always taken care of her. After leaving the resignation letter, Chaiwon left alone. Si-yeon came to find Chaiwon to go home together, but instead found the resignation letter. Si-yeon was very worried. Fortunately, he caught up with Chaiwon. He tore up the resignation letter. Then he kissed her. Meanwhile, Kun-hee arrived at the orphanage. She saw the director who had taken care of her since childhood was critically ill. Kun-hee was deeply saddened. At that moment, Si-ju arrived. To her surprise, The director berated her and ordered her to leave immediately. He accused Siju of being a thief. Meanwhile, Si-yeon's sincerity and perseverance deeply moved Chaewon. She agreed to face all the difficulties with Si-yeon. At that moment, Chaewon's parents returned. After bidding farewell to the orphanage director, Kun-hee looked extremely exhausted. Ho-dong did not want his daughter to be with Si-yeon. He was truly terrified by his daughter's first marriage experience. Si-yeon's family background was far superior to Choki's family. Ho-dong is deeply worried about his daughter. However, Kun-hee supports Chaewon. She believes Si-yeon is not that kind of person. Si-yeon returns home to find the restaurant lights still on. Si-ju is still reminiscing about what the director said earlier. Suddenly, she is startled by her son interrupting her. She then receives a call informing her that the director has passed away. Si-yeon and Chaewon, like all couples in love, wanted to hear each other's voices all the time. On this day off, Si-yeon actually came to the construction site to help Chaewon's father with his work. Ho-dong noticed that Si-yeon seemed different from the last time he saw her. After learning Si-yeon's home address, Kun-hee decided to pay a visit to Si-ju. Si-ju panicked when she saw Kun-hee and told her to leave immediately. Meanwhile, Si-yeon was chatting happily with everyone else. Her relationship with Chaewon's father had also improved a lot. Si-yeon, who had never done physical labor before, was so tired that she started bleeding from her nose. This made Chaewon think that Si-yeon was very cute. Later, Chaewon came to bring her grandfather some medicine. Unexpectedly, her grandfather collapsed in the factory. Chaewon hurriedly called Si-yeon. After examination, the doctor told Chaewon that her grandfather was in the late stages of pancreatic cancer. This was a bolt from the blue for Chaewon. After returning to the factory, her grandfather told Chaewon that his greatest regret was that there was no suitable heir for the century-old factory. Her grandfather hoped that Chaewon would come to fulfill his final wish. After careful consideration, Chaewon told Si-yeon that she had decided to fulfill her grandfather's wish. Chaewon went to the company to complete the handover of her work. Julie was very happy to see Chaewon resign. Si-yeon told Chaewon that she would take her to a banquet that night. Chaewon, dressed in her evening gown, caught Si-yeon's eye. Si-yeon noticed a pair of shoes that would look perfect on Chaewon. He personally helped Chaewon put them on. This gesture reminded Chaewon of the times when Si-yeon used to help her put on her shoes. Unexpectedly, the banquet was for Si-yeon's father's birthday. Si-ju had even invited Yanj and Julie. When everyone saw Si-yeon holding Chaewon's hand, they were all surprised. An angry Yanj directly hit Si-yeon. She had thought that this banquet was to bring Si-yeon and Julie together. She never expected it to turn out like this. She felt humiliated and left with her daughter. What was supposed to be a pleasant gathering ended in an unpleasant manner. Later, Si-yeon sent Chaewon home. He didn't want to keep their relationship a secret. He wanted to introduce Chaewon to his parents. They wanted to be together openly. Si-yeon's grandfather felt reassured seeing Chaewon capable of taking over the family business. He believed Chaewon would become the best noodle maker. Soon, Chaewon began her noodle making work. The happiest thing for Chaewon today was undoubtedly the flowers Si-yeon brought her. To celebrate the start of her new career, Si-yeon was very happy to receive Chaewon's thank you call. Julie felt very lonely upon seeing this. On the other side, the uncles and aunts were very unhappy upon learning that Chaewon had also joined the inheritance dispute. They all quit their jobs to return and inherit the estate. They weren't after the noodle factory, but the land her grandfather had mentioned, which was said to be worth 100 billion won. To ease their concerns, Chaewon's family promised that if they received the 100 billion won, they would divide it equally among them. That day, Yanj learned that her mother-in-law had divorced her husband due to an extramarital affair and hadn't received a single penny in alimony. Moreover, the child born from the affair was none other than Hanju. This enraged her. She attacked the matchmaker violently. That day, Si-ju unexpectedly came to Chaewon's house. She asked Chaewon's father to talk outside, hoping he could also stop Chaewon and Si-yeon from being together. The implication was that she looked down on Chaewon for being divorced. On the other side, Yanj returned home and immediately changed her attitude. She rushed into Hanju's room and scolded her harshly. That night, Si-yeon came to find Chaewon but was called away by Ho-dong. He told Si-yeon that his mother had come to see him that day. Ho-dong didn't want his daughter to repeat the same mistake. Meanwhile, Yanj saw her son looking dejected and was deeply troubled. She then went to her daughter's room. However, she saw Julie packing her luggage to move in with a friend. Julie said she couldn't leave Si-yeon. Seeing this, Yanj started to think of a scheme. She thought that if she could get Chaewon back, all her problems would be solved. The next day, she went to Chaewon's house and apologized to her. She hoped that Chaewon would forgive her. However, Chaiwon didn't want to talk to her. Yanj wanted to continue arguing. At that moment, Chaiwon's grandmother and mother came out. Chaiwon's family saw Yanj and wanted to beat her up. Her grandmother warned her to leave immediately. Yanj returned home and started yelling at Hanju, telling her to leave her house immediately. That night, Siyun had stomach pains and was sweating profusely. Hodong remembered that the meat slices Siyun had eaten for him at the construction site earlier that day had gone bad. Chaiwon felt very sorry for Siyun. Siyun, who was feeling unwell, had already fallen asleep at Chaiwon's house. At that moment, Siju called. Siju was furious to find his son at Chaiwon's house. Siju angrily took his son away. Seeing Siju's cold attitude, Chaiwon's family was very dissatisfied. Upon returning home, she began scolding her son. Siyun retorted that when her parents got married, they also faced opposition from their elders, that they ended up getting married because they loved each other. This statement deeply moved Siju, because she had been an orphan since childhood, and she dreaded others mentioning her past. At that moment, Chaiwon was making lemon jelly for Siyun, because it would help him regain his sense of taste. Early the next morning, Chaiwon came to the company to find Siyun, and brought her the lemon jelly she had carefully made. This deeply moved Siyun. Julie saw the loving scene between the two and was furious. Yanj, in an attempt to provoke Hanju, hung up the old wedding photos of Choki and Chaiwon on the wall. Choki saw this and felt that his mother's actions were inappropriate. That day, the eldest brother of the grandfather arrived. It turned out he had heard that he planned to sell the wheat field in Anshe. However, this land belonged to the clan and not their family. The children who had quit their jobs to return and inherit the estate were shocked upon hearing this. That day, the malicious Yanj began rummaging through Hanju's drawer again. He demanded she hand over the jewelry given to her at their wedding. The reason was that he had mistaken her for the daughter of a wealthy family when he married her. Now that he had discovered she was an illegitimate child, he wanted everything he had given her back. What was even more outrageous was that Yanj ordered Hanju to take off the ring on her finger. She had intended to give this jewelry to Chaiwon. She then sent a driver to deliver these items to Chaiwon's house. Chaiwon refused to accept them. She drove back to return them. However, she encountered the persistent Choki. Chaiwon never wants to have anything to do with this family again. Back home, Siyun brings Chaiwon some good news. Their company is holding a noodle competition. If they win, they will become partners with the company. Chaiwon immediately agrees to participate. She wants to revive her grandfather's factory. She also wants to gain the approval of Siyun's parents. Siyun is very happy to see Chaiwon so determined. On the other side, Bonda explains to his children that he lied about the wheat field being his own, so that they would come back and inherit the noodle factory. After the truth is revealed, his children are very disappointed. Kikon, ashamed and angry, runs to the factory to vent his frustration. Taehi packs her bags and leaves. Chaiwon sees the factory in ruins. She can only silently clean up the mess. That day, Chaiwon and Siyun accompanied their grandfather, who was in the late stages of cancer, to the hospital. However, after a thorough examination, it was discovered that the cancer cells had spread throughout his body. His grandfather had 3 to 6 months to live at most. Chaiwon was devastated upon hearing this news. Her grandfather hoped that Siyun and Chaiwon would be together. That way, he could rest in peace. In the morning, Chaiwon and her mother went to participate in the noodle competition together. Chaiwon went to submit her proposal. Her mother waited for her outside. Just then, Siju slapped Kunhee across the face. It turned out that she thought Kunhee had been following her. At that moment, Siju saw her son walking toward them. She was most afraid that Siyun would see Kunhee. She begged and forcibly dragged Kunhee away. Kunhee doesn't understand why Siju has been avoiding her. Siju tells her not to speculate and warns Kunhee not to show up in front of her again. Sitting on the bus, Kunhee recalls the words the director said before he died. She doesn't understand what Siju stole. That day, Cheoki sneaked home and locked the door from the inside. He then brought a box of money and transferred half of his shares and all of his real estate to Hanju. His goal was to get Hanju to divorce him. However, Hanju did not want to divorce him at that moment, but she accepted the money, real estate, and shares. This made Cheoki feel like he had been tricked. Yanj deliberately made things difficult for Hanju to drive her away. Hanju ignored her and left. Siyun returned home and took out the photos of his late girlfriend that he had been keeping. He burned them all. His mother couldn't understand what Chaiwon saw in him that made him sacrifice so much. Chaiwon and Siyun, who were deeply in love, needed to hear each other's voices every night to feel at ease. Today, Chaiwon made bitter-tasting jelly for Siyun. She changes the flavor every day to make jelly for Siyun to eat. all for the sake of Si-yeon regaining her sense of taste. The soup the maid made for Si-yeon in the morning hadn't been seasoned yet. Si-yeon actually poured sugar into the soup. This action puzzled the maid. She then reported it to the master. The next day, Si-ju called Si-yeon's older brother to confirm her suspicion. It turned out that Si-yeon had lost his sense of taste 3 years ago. The death of his girlfriend had been too much for him to handle. Currently, the only person who could help Si-yeon regain his sense of taste was Chaewon. Si-ju felt deeply guilty toward his son upon learning this. On the other side, Chaewon's noodle-making competition had reached the 3rd round. She had also reached the final crucial stage. Si-yeon was waiting anxiously outside. Yanj came to tell his son that he had received news that Chaewon had made it to the 3rd round of the competition. He brought a bouquet of flowers for his son to give to Chaewon when she came out. After the competition, Chaewon went outside to get some fresh air. Unexpectedly, she ran into Cheoki as soon as she stepped out. Cheoki started pestering Chaewon again. Si-ju rushed over to stop him. Cheoki said, "This is between us. You have no right to interfere." Si-ju knew they had already divorced. She pulled Chaewon away directly. Chaewon never expected that the person who had always prevented her from dating his son would suddenly change his attitude toward her today. Julie was also confused by the situation. She learned that her son had lost his sense of taste 3 years ago. As his mother, she felt extremely guilty for not knowing about it until now. Si-yeon comforted his mother, assuring her that he was fine. A company employee told Chaewon that she had made it to the final round of the noodle-making competition. This made Chaewon very happy. Cheoki and Julie, the pitiful brother and sister, decided to go drinking together. Yeonjae saw this and felt helpless. Back in the room, Cheoki started acting drunk. Yeonjae saw his son like this and quickly hugged him to comfort him. He then scolded Hanju and told her to leave the house immediately. Hanju was truly heartbroken this time. That evening, Chaewon brought Si-yeon home for dinner. She also gave Kunhee a bouquet of her favorite flowers. This made her very happy. Chaewon-san took Yeonjae's bribe and came to stir up trouble between Chaewon and Si-yeon. She even spoke well of Yeonjae. Si-yeon returned home and noticed that his mother seemed different from before. He quickly called Chaewon to tell her that his mother had started to like her. In the morning, Hanju made breakfast for the family, but to her surprise, no one appreciated it. This made Hanju very sad. Today was the final review for Chaewon's noodle-making competition. After Chaewon's careful explanation, Si-yeon's father, who was the chairman, was very satisfied with Chaewon's noodle-making skills. Hanju was finally leaving this place. She had no attachments left here. She left a divorce agreement on the table. The noodle-making competition finally had results. Chaewon won 1st place. This made Chaewon's family very happy. Chaewon found her uncle and aunt who had run away from home. She told them about the future development plans for the factory. She planned to have them return to the factory to help out. In the end, the family was reunited once again. On the other side, Si-yeon's parents told their son that they agreed to let Si-yeon and Chaewon date. Si-yeon was very happy. Cheoki returned home and saw the divorce agreement left by Hanju. He felt no sadness at all. Instead, he was very happy. His cruel mother, seeing this, was also very happy. On the other side, Si-yeon hurriedly found Chaewon and told her the good news. Upon hearing this, Chaewon was momentarily speechless. Then the two happily embraced each other. At that moment, the maid brought a letter to Si-ju. It was a letter left by the director before his death. The letter seemed to contain some secret that made Si-ju panic. The next day, Cheoki found Chaewon and gave her a new car in an attempt to reconcile with her. Although he explained that he had already divorced Hanju, Chaewon did not want to reconcile with him. Just as Cheoki was feeling distressed, Chaewon's aunt appeared. She knew it was impossible to persuade the two to get back together. She was about to return the expensive bag she had received earlier. Cheoki was unwilling to give up and hurriedly handed over the new car to his aunt for safekeeping. On the other side, Yeonjae suddenly learned that half of the shares in her son's company had been transferred to Hanju's name. This made her furious. She demanded to know if her son had given Hanju anything else. Cheoki truthfully admitted that there was also a villa in Jeju Island and a building. Hearing this, Yeonjae was so angry that he nearly fainted. Si-yeon was picking out an engagement ring when she bumped into Julie. Seeing this, Julie felt that she had no hope left. Meanwhile, Si-ju went to the orphanage and locked the door from the inside. She then began searching for the diary left by the director, whom she feared greatly. She searched everywhere but couldn't find it. This made Si-ju very anxious. That day, Chaewon dressed up carefully. She was preparing to visit Si-yeon's parents for the first time. Her mother prepared a bouquet of flowers that Si-ju loved most. She hoped Chaewon would make her happy. With a nervous heart, Chaewon arrived at Si-yeon's house. She gave the flowers to Si-ju. Si-ju loved them as expected. However, Chaewon felt a bit awkward during the meal. Si-yeon noticed and quickly broke the ice. After dinner, Si-yeon was delighted to see his mother and Chaewon getting along so well. That That evening, Chaiwon's parents were already waiting outside for them. Si-yeon had planned to give Chaiwon the engagement ring, but it seemed like today wasn't the right time. On the other side, Si-ju was extremely afraid that the contents of the director's diary would be exposed. She felt that she had to get her son Si-yeon married as soon as possible. Then arranging for him to be transferred to an overseas branch would be the safest option. That day, the parents of Chaiwon and Si-yeon met to discuss the wedding arrangements. Si-ju finally learned that Kunhee was actually Chaiwon's mother. This made her, who was hiding a secret, look very unhappy. She then pretended to feel unwell and asked to go home to rest. The meeting had to end abruptly. Si-yeon and his father found her behavior strange. Si-ju recalled the things she had done in the past and grew increasingly frightened. She absolutely couldn't allow Kunhee to become her in-law. Chaiwon brought her a glass of water. She asked Chaiwon how Kunhee could be her mother. Chaiwon saw this and explained. However, Si-ju was determined to stop them from getting married. That day, Si-ju asked Kunhee to meet her. She firmly opposed Si-yeon marrying Chaiwon. On the other side, Chaiwon successfully received the certificate and award for winning first place in the noodle-making competition. Her grandfather's noodle factory also successfully signed a contract with a large company. Julie watched Si-yeon and Chaiwon's loving and sweet relationship with jealousy. Cheoki also went to great lengths to win Chaiwon back. He hired a chef to cook a big meal for all the workers at Chaiwon's father's construction site. Si-ju went to the orphanage to ask for the director's diary. Unexpectedly, the diary had already been mailed to Kunhee, so she approached Chaiwon's aunt and asked her to find the package and give it to her. Tae-hee agreed readily. Julie officially submitted her resignation today. She told Si-yeon he would regret it. That day, Tae-hee signed for the package. He then delivered it to Si-ju. Coincidentally, she wasn't home. Tae-hee left the package by the mailbox. Kunhee was getting angrier and angrier at home. She decided to have a serious talk with Si-ju. She went to Si-ju's house, but no one was home. Then she suddenly noticed the package. She was curious as to why a package addressed to her was at Si-ju's house. Si-ju hurried home. However, the package was gone. Kunhee looked through the diary. Si-ju, frantic with worry, started calling Tae-hee to ask where the package was. However, Tae-hee had no idea either. Just then, Kunhee rushed back to the room with the diary. It turned out that Kunhee and Si-ju were due to give birth around the same time. While they were taking photos with the director, both of them suddenly felt intense abdominal pain and were about to give birth. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Both of them gave birth to two adorable babies. Then an accident occurred. Si-ju's baby suddenly stopped breathing. In order to keep her position in her in-law's family, she swapped her baby with Kunhee's. Si-ju, desperate with worry, heard from the nanny that Kunhee had come today. She panicked. At that moment, Kunhee also learned the truth about the baby swap. It turned out that Si-yeon was her biological son. She then went to Si-yeon's office. Looking at the family photo of the three of them, she was heartbroken. Si-ju rushed over. She begged Kunhee to come out and talk. Si-ju knelt down before Kunhee, pleading for her forgiveness. She was afraid that Si-yeon would leave her. However, knowing the truth, Kunhee was determined to retrieve her own son. Chaiwon noticed that her mother seemed mentally unstable and brought her a drink to quench her thirst. Kunhee hesitated, knowing that revealing the truth would put Chaiwon in a difficult position. The next day, Si-ju arranged to meet Chaiwon. This was destined to be a tragic day for Chaiwon. She then told Chaiwon that Si-yeon could no longer be with her. Chaiwon was utterly shocked. She begged Si-ju not to let her break up with Si-yeon. On the other side, ever since Kunhee found out that Si-yeon was her son, her heart had been in turmoil. She called Si-yeon and asked him to have dinner together that night. Si-ju heard the news from her son and immediately called Kunhee. However, the situation had already spiraled out of her control. On the other side, Cheoki came to Chaiwon's noodle factory to work. Seeing Cheoki made Chaiwon very upset. Chaiwon's uncle saw Cheoki and was furious. He immediately warned him to get out. Cheoki returned to the company. Yanj saw his good-for-nothing son and scolded him harshly. On the other side, Si-yeon's father suggested that they should have dinner with Chaiwon's family and set a date for the wedding. How could Si-ju agree to that? This reminded her of the past. Kunhee had planned to tell Si-yeon the whole truth, but when she saw her son, she hesitated. Meanwhile, Si-ju was afraid that her son would break off their relationship if he found out the truth. But when Si-yeon came back, he had bought her favorite food. This touched her deeply. That day, Tae-hee discovered a package containing a diary. She was curious about what was written in the diary that Si-ju cherished so much. Soon, she also learned the truth. Just as she was reflecting on it, Kunhee returned. Kunhee told her to keep the secret. However, the next day, she revealed the diary's secret to Cheoki. This made Cheoki very happy. His opportunity had finally arrived. That day, Chaiwon saw her mother crying secretly in the courtyard. This made Chaiwon suspicious. The next morning, Kunhee came to Si-ju's house. Si-ju sent the nanny away. However, Chaiwon also rushed over to visit Si-yeon's mother. Their conversation was overheard by Chaiwon. She couldn't believe what was happening. Kunhee later found Chaiwon and explained that she was also in a difficult situation. Chaiwon was really afraid of losing Si-yeon. Just then, Si-yeon called. He invited Chaewon to go to the factory to confirm the noodle samples. Si-yeon's company had already signed a technical cooperation agreement with Chaewon's family's noodle factory. They would officially launch the high-gluten noodles that Chaewon had won in the noodle competition as the company's main product. They would also provide dividends to Chaewon's family factory based on sales volume. This made Chaewon and her uncles very happy. As the developer of the new noodle product, Chaewon toured the factory's modern assembly line. The production quality and taste were also approved by Chaewon. On the way home, Chaewon, who had already learned the truth, faced Si-yeon with a conflicted heart. After Si-yeon left, Chaewon cried bitterly. Kun-hee felt deeply guilty toward Chaewon. She was torn between revealing the truth that Si-yeon was her son, but she also feared that revealing it would harm Chaewon and Si-yeon. That day, Chaewon tried on a wedding dress. Kun-hee decided to keep this secret buried deep within her heart. The group then happily took a group photo. Si-ju, upon hearing this, finally felt a little relieved. On the other side, Tae-hee saw that Cheoki and Chaewon were already together. She came to return the bribe she had received. She also told Cheoki that Chaewon and Si-yeon had already set a wedding date. Kun-hee decided to keep the truth hidden. Upon hearing this, Cheoki still said he wouldn't give up. Feeling depressed, Cheoki started drinking again. He also told his mother that Si-yeon was Kun-hee's son. That day, the parents of both sides held a meeting. On this joyous occasion, Cheoki suddenly burst in. He told everyone about Chaewon and Si-yeon's relationship. This surprised everyone. Facing Si-yeon's questioning, Si-ju remained silent. Seeing her mother panic and run away, Kun-hee also refused to answer. Si-yeon and his father already knew the truth. Back home, Si-ju admitted everything. However, knowing the truth, Si-yeon couldn't accept it. Chaewon called Si-yeon, but the phone was turned off. This made Chaewon very worried. Si-yeon's father was also deeply disappointed in his wife. This situation was all Si-ju's fault. Early the next morning, Cheoki asked her mother to go to Chaewon's house so that Chaewon's family could see her change. Chaewon was worried about Si-yeon and came to the company early in the morning and brought him a heartfelt breakfast. Si-yeon said that their relationship would not change for any reason. Hearing Si-yeon's words, Chaewon was deeply moved. To get back at Si-yeon, Julie also had her mom's company enter the noodle market. In the mall, Julie unexpectedly ran into Chaewon. Chaewon was personally promoting the new noodle product. The business competition between the two officially began. Seeing how popular Chaewon's noodles were, Julie's jealousy started to get the better of her. That day, Si-ju arranged to meet Kun-hee. She sincerely apologized to Kun-hee. However, Kun-hee refused to accept her apology no matter what. Meanwhile, Yanj paid a visit to Chaewon's house. Unexpectedly, he encountered Kun-hee and Si-ju at the door. Yanj immediately mocked Si-ju. Si-ju ignored her. Yanj actually hopes that his son will reconcile with Chaewon. Chaewon's family remembers her previous life and all disagree. Her grandfather says that he will not consider anyone other than Si-yeon. That night, Si-yeon comes home after drinking heavily. He scolds his mother for her previous behavior, saying it is unacceptable. Hearing her son's words, she feels very hurt. The next day, Si-yeon's father tells Si-yeon to cancel the engagement with Chaewon. If he didn't listen, he would cut off all ties with Si-yeon. At the same time, he also decided to divorce Si-ju. On the other side, Julie, in order to reduce costs, found a problematic manufacturer. This led to the noodles having excessive levels of heavy metals. Yeonjae was therefore approved for arrest by the court. Julie, who was determined to take revenge on Chaewon and Si-yeon, ended up dragging her mother's company into ruin. Cheoki is trying his best to resolve the crisis. However, what's even more troubling is that consumers have organized a boycott of all the company's products due to the contaminated noodle incident. The stock market is also facing the risk of collapse. In prison, Yeonjae is on the verge of being tortured to madness. He then gets into an argument with his cellmate until a fierce-looking woman looks at her. She finally calms down. Fortunately, Cheoki brought a lawyer and got his mother out on bail. Even so, Yeonjae still pretended not to care. Meanwhile, Si-yeon's subordinates reported the news of the competitors' troubles. However, Si-yeon did not gloat over their misfortune. At that moment, his secretary brought him a custom-made wedding invitation. He recalled what his father had told him earlier. His heart was torn in two. Si-ju arranged to meet Kun-hee. She took all the photos and videos of Si-yeon from when he was a child, then handed them to Kun-hee. Seeing the only photo of Si-yeon that was left, Si-ju couldn't help but shed tears. Although he wasn't her biological son, Si-ju had given all her love to Si-yeon. Back home, Kun-hee watched the videos of Si-yeon from when he was a child and was deeply saddened. Chaewon saw this and felt a mix of emotions. Siyun came to find Chaiwon and gave her the wedding invitation. He told Chaiwon that their wedding must take place as scheduled. Marrying Siyun left a deep emotional barrier in Chaiwon's heart. Seeing Chaiwon like this, her grandfather decided to support the two of them. However, her grandmother felt that this was inappropriate. On the other side, Yanj was in a complete mess. The company was on the brink of bankruptcy. She started scheming again. She instructed her lawyer to dispose of all her assets and withdraw her savings. She was preparing to flee. Siyun's father will transfer him to the US branch next week. He made it clear that he doesn't want him to see Chaiwon again. However, Siyun insists on marrying Chaiwon. Seeing this, his father stated that he will not inherit the company. Siyun has made his decision. He placed his resignation letter on his desk to make his stance clear. Upon returning home, Siyun began packing his belongings. He told his mother he was leaving the house. Siyun went to Chaiwon's house to take her to another city for their wedding. Her grandfather readily agreed to his request. He then took Chaiwon and rushed to the place where they were to be married. On the other side, Siju spends her days drowning her sorrows in alcohol. Her husband, seeing this, is deeply disappointed in her. After a heated argument, he leaves the house. Under the double blow, Siju's emotions become even more extreme. Ho-dong, upon learning that his daughter has run away from home, is furious. He was about to call Chaiwon but was stopped by Kun-hee, who advised him not to get involved. However, Ho-dong scolded his wife for being irresponsible. On the other side, Siju looked at her son's childhood photos and felt increasingly sad. She felt the tightness in her chest, as if she couldn't breathe. She quickly took the medicine and swallowed it, completely forgetting that she had just drunk alcohol. Chaiwon, who was set to marry Siyun the next day, felt her mind in turmoil. With the wedding approaching, Siyun drove Chaiwon to make final preparations for the ceremony. At that moment, Tae-hee received a call from Siju's nanny, who said something had happened to Siju. Sure enough, when they opened the door, Siju was sitting on a chair, unconscious. They rushed her to the hospital for emergency treatment. Chaiwon turned on his phone before the wedding. He heard various messages. He even received a phone call. The wedding began. Siyun entered first. When it was time for Chaiwon to enter, he didn't show up. His older brother went out to check and found that Chaiwon was gone. Chaiwon then told Siyun that his mother was in the hospital undergoing emergency treatment. Siyun was shocked. Chaiwon told him that he was going back to Seoul first. Siyun was very disappointed that all his careful preparations had come to nothing. Kun-hee also rushed over to ask what was going on. The doctor said that although the patient had passed the critical stage, he would need to rest and recuperate properly. At the shareholders' meeting, the shareholders asked Yanj to take his son and daughter and resign in disgrace. They also demanded that she take full responsibility for the poor management by donating all her personal assets. Yanj was relieved that he had transferred his assets in advance. Chaiwon returned home. As soon as he entered the door, he was scolded by his father. Chaiwon told his father that he and Siyun had not held a wedding. Siyun arrived at the hospital and was heartbroken to see his mother looking so haggard and sad. On the other side, Chaiwon felt deeply guilty toward Siyun. Kun-hee believed that all the obstacles Chaiwon and Siyun were facing now were because of her. She looked at her grandfather and then at Chaiwon. Even though she was filled with reluctance, she had made her decision. Early in the morning, Ho-dong shouted excitedly. The entire family was startled and ran out. It turned out that Kun-hee had run away from home. Chaiwon rushed over to ask Siyun if he knew about Kun-hee running away. However, Siyun said he would have his secretary handle it. He told Chaiwon that from now on, they should only meet for work-related matters. That day, Siyun saw Chaiwon and Cheoki hugging. Siyun ignored them and walked straight into the house. It turned out that Chaiwon's grandfather had passed away due to illness. Siyun came to pay his respects. Everyone looked uncomfortable when they saw Cheoki arrive. Seeing Cheoki crying so bitterly, Chaiwon's uncles were also moved. Siyun then bid farewell to Chaiwon. As he was heading to the US branch, Cheoki saw this and felt that he had another chance. Today was the day of his grandfather's funeral. This noodle factory was his grandfather's life's work. This was perhaps the perfect embodiment of the spirit of a craftsman. Kun-hee secretly rushed back to see his grandfather off. Upon hearing the news that Siyun was going to the United States, Julie came to say goodbye to him. She apologized to Siyun. Siyun told her to forget the past and start over. Chaiwon hung her grandfather's photo on the wall. She would assist her uncles in running the factory properly. Siyun, who was leaving for the United States tomorrow, began packing his belongings. Seeing Chaiwon's photo fall out, he felt 1,000 emotions welling up inside him. Yanj found her last designer handbag and jewelry and asked a matchmaker to sell them for her. However, the matchmaker mocked her. In the end, she only gave her a small amount of money. Cheoki found a job as a chauffeur. He lamented how he had fallen so low, but when he thought of what Chaiwon had said to him, he felt a surge of strength. That day, Kun-hee learned that Siyun was leaving for the United States, but Chaiwon wasn't going with her. This made her very angry. She had left home and even divorced Ho-dong on just to be with them. She asked Siju to tell her husband that if he didn't let Chaiwon and Siyun marry, she would transfer Siyun's household registration to her name. Siju told her husband about this. If he still refused to let Chaiwon and Siyun be together, she would go to the police station herself to expose her own crimes. However, Siyun's father was not intimidated by their threats. He still decided to let Siyun go to the United States. Seeing his son about to leave, Siju was truly heartbroken. On the way to the airport, Siyun received a call from Chaiwon's father, who told him where Kunhee was. Siyun asked the taxi to change its route. He wanted to see his biological mother first. At the same time, Siju got a ticket for the same flight as Siyun and gave it to Chaiwon. She urged Chaiwon to leave quickly. Chaiwon looked at the ticket and finally made up her mind. But then the taxi Siyun was in had an accident. Chaiwon rushed to the airport, but Siyun had been taken to the hospital for emergency treatment. Meanwhile, Siju received a call from the emergency room at the hospital and learns that Siyun is in the emergency room. Chaiwon waits anxiously at the airport. Just then, she receives a call from Siju and is shocked. Siju and her husband rush to the hospital to inquire about the situation. The doctor informs them that the patient has been stabilized. However, Siyun has a brain hemorrhage and needs immediate surgery to remove the blood clot. Otherwise, her life will be in danger. Siju was devastated by the news and begged the doctor to save her son. Chaiwon rushed to the hospital and felt guilty upon learning that Siyun was undergoing surgery. Hodong and Kunhee also hurried to the hospital. Kunhee was anxiously waiting in the car. At that moment, Cheoki was driving for someone else. Just as he left, his ex-wife Hanju got out of the car. It turned out that Hanju had bought the house. Yanj was now penniless. This was a huge blow to her. Julie felt very guilty when she saw this. On the other hand, Siyun's surgery was very successful. However, he had suffered severe brain injuries. He was still in a coma. Siju and Kunhee were both blaming themselves, but their love for Siyun was the same. This love also allowed them to let go of their past grievances. Siyun's father apologized to Chaiwon and admitted his mistakes. The nurse handed Chaiwon Siyun's personal belongings. Seeing the ring reminded Chaiwon of the past. She had personally put the ring on Siyun's finger, but because she had abandoned him on their wedding day, Siyun was deeply hurt. Now Siyun lies unconscious in the hospital bed. This makes Chaiwon feel extremely guilty. If she hadn't wavered at that moment, Siyun might not be in this state now. That day, Yanj felt nauseous and couldn't eat. Worried about her mother's health, Cheoki wanted to take her to the hospital. Unbeknownst to her, Cheoki saw Siyun lying in the hospital bed. After inquiring, she learned that Siyun had been in a car accident. Curious, Cheoki peeks into the room from outside. This scene is witnessed by Chaiwon. Chaiwon tells him that she will wait until Siyun wakes up, and not to hold out any hope. That day, Cheoki receives another ride-sharing order. He notices that the passenger looks familiar. He then realizes that the driver is Hanju. After getting out of the car, he saw that Hanju was pregnant. This shocked Cheoki. Cheoki never expected that the child was his. Julie learned that Siyun had been in a car accident and was in a coma. This left her frantic with worry. She immediately rushed to the hospital to visit Siyun. A month had passed in the blink of an eye. Chaiwon asked the doctor how much longer it would take for Siyun to wake up. The doctor informed them that the patient might become a vegetable. Chaiwon couldn't believe it. That day, Siyun suddenly started convulsing. After the doctor treated him, he was fortunately okay. Seeing Chaiwon's persistence and optimism deeply moved Cheoki. Back home, Cheoki told his mother that Hanju was pregnant. To his surprise, Yanj actually suspected that Hanju wasn't carrying Cheoki's child. Hanju didn't want to deal with her. Yanj arranged to meet Hanju to demand the alimony Cheoki had given her at the time of their divorce. However, Hanju refused to meet her. That day, Yanj saw in the newspaper that Hanju had acquired her company. This completely changed her attitude. Cheoki was helpless to see her mother acting so selfishly. Chaiwon also received some good news that day. Siyun regained consciousness. This made everyone who had been suffering very happy. Chaiwon quickly told Siju the good news. Siju was very excited. After hearing the news, Chaiwon's family, who had heard the news, finally put their minds at ease. That day, at her mother's repeated request, Cheoki invited Hanju to their home. The snobbish Yanj showed Hanju a lot of concern. This made Julie and Cheoki unable to bear it. Hanju was also very generous and let them move back into their old big house. She even arranged positions for Julie and Cheoki at her company. Yanj was so excited that he almost knelt down in front of Hanju. On the other side, the family was very happy to see Siyun wake up. Siyun's father even suggested that Siyun and Chaiwon get married as soon as possible. This perfect ending made everyone very happy. But then another unexpected turn of events occurred. Siyun couldn't even hold a cup in his hands. He couldn't couldn't use his legs either. The doctor told him that he might have difficulty walking due to brain nerve damage. Si-yeon asked if he would be unable to walk in the future. The doctor didn't give a clear answer. All they could do now was patiently accept the treatment. Yanj was overjoyed to move back into the big house. However, Hanju said that there was no maid in the house. From now on, she would be responsible for all the housework. Moreover, the master bedroom where Yanj used to live was now Hanju's. A distinguished guest from the Blue House visited the noodle factory today. At the banquet for the Asian Cultural Exchange event, they planned to introduce the factory's noodles to everyone. Upon hearing the news, the two uncles couldn't believe it. Si-yeon is determined to recover and not cause trouble for Chaiwon. He persists with his rehabilitation every day, no matter how difficult or tiring it is. His belief keeps him going. Chaiwon returns home to find the house empty. Her uncle tells her that the noodles made for the cultural exchange event have gone bad. Chaiwon couldn't believe it and rushed over immediately. To her surprise, this was a surprise prepared by her family for Chaiwon. Today, Chaiwon and Si-yeon were finally getting married. After overcoming countless hardships, Si-yeon and Chaiwon had finally come together. The film ends here. If you're interested, please like and follow us. See you next time.